At the center of the world, amidst a vast white wasteland that seemed to swallow all light, lived creatures that made the entire world tremble. A colossal white serpent that devoured glaciers, a massive gray bear whose steps shook the earth, and a cursed giant rat capable of polluting the seas. Yet, an emperor who once returned alive from that place claimed that the monsters were not the greatest danger there. Here, in the middle of a blinding blizzard, a series of tremors erupted, throwing snow into the air in giant white columns. A barefooted, stoic girl struck down a beast amidst the roaring sky. Not far away, a whirl, shaking explosion tore through the space. The sturdy hands of a man gripped the monster's giant pincers. He let out a deafening roar, a declaration of war against the world. Just then, a figure slowly approached, causing the monster to tremble instantly, its blood-red eyes filled with terror. In his hand was a sharp weapon, each slash as swift as lightning and as decisive as the grim reaper's scythe. In a flash, the monster was sent to its grave. He stood leisurely beside the two who had just been fighting, his gaze sweeping over them with contempt. How much longer do I have to put up with these foolish brutes? The girl's eyes widened like a child hearing a strange new word, and she asked innocently, "What's a brute? Can you eat it?" He sighed, walking away in exasperation, leaving the bald man and the girl to casually butcher and feast on the beast. But before they could swallow a bite, Kettle appeared like a demon in the storm. A murderous aura enveloped him, and his voice was as cold as ice. "I warned you not to eat that. It will kill you. Has it been less than a week, and you've already eaten everything?" The girl was at a loss for words. Meanwhile, the other two acted as if their heroic fall was some noble trial, a matter of pride. As Kettle's roar faded, the bald warrior, Balti, began to convulse violently. His face turned pale as if poisoned, his whole body trembled, and white foam frothed at his mouth before he collapsed, to the girl Gritta's panicked screams. "Wake up!" Behind them, Kettle merely sighed softly, leaving her to shake him in desperation. "I told you, but you wouldn't listen." He turned and walked away, his figure gradually disappearing into the blizzard, leaving a sentence to echo faintly in the wind. "This isn't what I wanted." And then, his narration began, a distant echo in a world of magic and fantasy. "I left everything behind to wander. I climbed the highest mountain, set foot in the center of the planet, and even reached the South Pole, but nothing happened. Reality was always far from my dreams. Every night, I prayed that when I woke up, I would be living in a dream. Until the day that prayer came true." The scene shifts. Amidst a thick snowstorm, a caravan of carriages trudged onward. Freezing to the bone, a blonde-haired man shivered and complained. The person next to him replied coldly, "Then, wrap yourself up tighter, unless you want to freeze to death." The young man shielded his face from the wind, his lips trembling. "I am already wrapped up, sir." Beside him, another man spoke hesitantly. "Captain, no matter how great the reward, crossing the white wasteland is a foolish act. Are you really sure about this?" But the only reply was the captain's determined, ice-cold glare. "Silence. Didn't you all agree to this?" The soldier gulped, avoiding his gaze and muttering, "But we never expected it to be this terrible." Inside a carriage, an old butler frowned in annoyance, clucking his tongue. "Damn it, it's so cold." He pulled his scarf over his mouth, coughed lightly, and turned to the young woman before him. "My lady, are you all right?" The blue-haired girl smiled like a flower blooming in winter. "I am fine." She was Mylana of the House of Acacia. Outside, the groans and complaints continued. "Damn it, I'm going to freeze," the butler snapped. "How disrespectful." But Mylana gently intervened, "Don't be so harsh. They were the only ones who dared to escort us through the white wasteland. Perhaps we should let them inside. They look as if they're about to freeze to death." The butler immediately shook his head, his tone gray. "Absolutely not. You know very well what resides here." Mylana lowered her gaze and whispered, "The monsters, right?" His voice was slow as he recounted the tale. A long time ago, an ambitious emperor led a great army into the white wasteland, dreaming of conquering it. Many years later, his empire had fallen, and he returned alone, aged by decades, his mind in a fog. He would mutter that the monsters there were terrifying, but what was more terrifying were the barbarians. They might still be here. The old butler continued his speculation, or perhaps it's just a legend. But Mylana immediately refuted this, arguing that the emperor's words were not baseless, as many of the monsters he described were later confirmed to exist. The butler smiled to reassure her, but also reminded her that no one had ever actually seen a barbarian. Finally, she had to accept it. Countless stories had been passed down, but none of them mentioned barbarians. Outside the carriage, the captain suddenly shouted for them to halt, gritting his teeth as he stared ahead. He squinted, trying to see what was approaching, but the fog was too thick. All he could do was mutter, "I can't see clearly," before his face suddenly turned to one of horror. He announced he had good news and bad news. Everyone urged him on. "The good news is that it's quite small." The bad news was the silhouette of Kettle advancing toward them. Under the falling snow, everyone's expression changed in unison. The old butler's eyes widened as he looked out. The captain immediately went on high alert, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword. His terrified gaze followed the shape that was slowly becoming clearer, a man with ashen white hair, six-pack abs, large scars, and sharp, violet eyes. Kettle strode confidently closer, his sharp as a razor gaze sweeping over each person before he spoke, saying he had come out for a walk. He was sick of looking at the other barbarians, and didn't expect to run into people in the middle of the snow. What a stroke of luck. His mouth curved into a knowing smile, feigning excitement as he introduced himself, and expressed his pleasure in meeting them. He then glanced at the carriage and asked if they were merchants. Receiving a confirmation, he asked if the others were hired mercenaries for escort. The captain also nodded. Hittle rubbed his chin, advising them to turn back, though he had anticipated they would come here, which briefly terrified the captain. Suddenly Kettle realized someone was in the carriage, startling Mylena. The captain, too, trembled as he awaited a reaction. With a smirk, Kettle said he wanted to be hired, immediately putting everyone on guard. He stood confidently with a hand on his hip, affirming that he was offering to help them cross the wasteland. This made the captain contemplate the fact that a legendary barbarian was asking to join them, and he cautiously asked if Kettle had other intentions. Kettle crossed his arms and coldly replied that if he had, they would all be dead by now, a realization that stunned the group. The young man, however, turned his head to look at the captain and slowly raised a hand to object, arguing that the emperor's words were not baseless, as many of the monsters he described were later confirmed to exist. The butler smiled reassuringly at the lady but also reminded her that no one had ever actually seen a barbarian. In the end, she had to accept it. What will happen if we fight? I don't recommend it, so tell him we accept, the lady commanded. Yes, my lady, the captain replied clearly. He then walked towards Kettle. You're hired. Hearing this, a smile formed on the corner of Kettle's lips. Well, that's very good news. The group remained silent, not daring to utter a word. The captain was bewildered. What? Kettle replied, don't be afraid. You are just soldiers. I need to speak directly with my employer. The captain growled, if you dare try anything. Before he could finish, Kettle cut him off with a mocking laugh. Be careful. With that, he brushed past the man and moved forward. Seeing this, the stylish young man stared blankly after him, asking his captain in a hushed, doubtful tone, Captain, is this really okay? Letting him meet her. But the employer has already given permission. A soldier next to them, also showing clear unease, whispered, even so, we're mercenaries. Shouldn't we at least try to stop him? The captain glanced over and snapped, stop him. With what? Look closely. With that much bloodlust pouring out of him, who has the guts to stop him? Kettle's cold and menacing figure was still vivid in their minds, sending a shiver down their spines. Inside the carriage, the old butler's face was pale, his heart pounding. He looked at his young mistress with trembling eyes, pleading, my lady, what are you doing? Mylena simply reassured him in a soft voice, calm down. But before she could finish, a deep voice from outside the carriage door made them both jump. May I come in? The butler was so terrified he dropped his glasses. Mylena also hesitated for a long moment before answering. Yes. Come in. Kettle's lips curled into a smirk, a smile as sharp as a demon about to claim its prey. His large figure entered, causing the butler to shrink back, and the space within the carriage filled with an oppressive, suffocating aura. He sat down and spoke indifferently, please calm down, I have no intention of harming you. However, his muscular frame nearly crushed the old butler beside him, making the man scream internally, don't come any closer, you monster. In contrast, Mylena, sitting opposite him, couldn't help but be mesmerized. The legendary figure of a barbarian she had only heard stories about was now right before her. Flustered, she spoke softly, it is an honor to meet you. Kettle smiled politely in return, the pleasure is all mine. Gazing at the white snowscape outside the window, he sighed softly, it's quite warm in here. It's hard to maintain warmth in the middle of a vast snowy plain. Mylena was slightly surprised, then gently explained, that is thanks to magic. He nodded cheerfully. Oh, magic. This world is just as I dreamed it would be. His casual remark left her confused. Kettle's gaze grew somber for a moment, and he continued, this place is extremely dangerous. Even with mercenary escorts, your chances of surviving the crossing are very slim. Therefore, I will ensure your safety. He paused, his voice deepening. But I have one request. Both Mylena and the butler tensed. A request? She asked hesitantly. He gave a half-smile. The knowledge, the information you bring from outside the white snowfield, that is what I want. Mylena was stunned. Knowledge from the outside. He nodded decisively. That's right. You lose nothing. You just need to tell me the things you know. Her mind was in turmoil, understanding that she never really had a choice from the beginning. Finally, Mylena sighed in acceptance. I understand. The old butler beside her was petrified, his mouth agape in horror. Kettle smiled gently, his voice softening. Good. So, what is your name? She placed a hand on her chest and replied formally, I am Milena, of the Akasa family. He smiled in return. I am Kettle. It is a pleasure to work with you. In my past life, I was someone who longed to live in a fantasy world, a place of magic, wonders, and adventure. On my desk back then, an open-world game disc was still laid out, the PlayStation controller held tightly in my hand as if wanting to dive into another universe. Yet one day I woke up to find I had become a barbarian in the middle of a vast, bone-killingly cold, white snowfield. That figure staggered to its feet, looking bewildered at the unfamiliar hands, with no time to understand what was happening. There was no time to find out why. Because the only things that existed here were a crude axe carved from stone and countless powerful monsters always lurking. I led a small tribe in the freezing wilderness, hunting to survive, gritting my teeth through each day like a never-ending nightmare. I don't know how much time passed, nor how many years I survived, only that I never stopped trying to escape this hopeless place. But every time I thought I was about to leave, my hand would hit an invisible wall. The quest system would pop up relentlessly, mission not complete. Cannot leave the white snowfield. Some unseen force kept me here, an endless imprisonment. Just as I was about to fall into despair, the figure of a cavalryman suddenly appeared amidst a blizzard. I couldn't understand why anyone would dare set foot in such a harsh place. But then I realized that occasionally, people from the outside world would wander in. It was only then that I, Kettle, shockingly understood that beyond this damn snowy wasteland lay a real world of fantasy and magic. A world with deep blue skies, the warm gazes of its people, and endless stretches of green plains. Villages and towns with quaint, picturesque architecture rose from the fields. It was the very world I had once longed for. From that moment on, I no longer fought just to survive, but to escape. To live in that world. He slaughtered monsters relentlessly, completing mission 295, exterminating a lizard god within the time limit, blood splattering everywhere after a single killing blow. Mission complete. A new mission would appear, and he would continue, holding on to the belief that one day, he would truly step out of the white wasteland. Because he couldn't escape, every piece of information gathered from outsiders was incredibly precious. However, Kettle realized that most of the people he had met either drew their swords in a panic or were half-mad, muttering nonsense. So, when someone was willing to talk, he calmly crossed his arms, thinking to himself, how long has it been since I've had a conversation with a civilized person? After so many days living among uneducated barbarians, speaking with a decent human being was like a breath of fresh air. He suddenly spoke, his tone relaxed. You're transporting weapons, aren't you? Milena answered, startled. Yes. How did you know? Kettle glanced outside and replied nonchalantly, the sound of steel clashing against steel in the carriage. It wasn't hard to figure out. She was slightly flustered. You see? He asked again, is there a war going on in the outside world? Milena's expression turned sad as she said softly, yes, the Empire and the Kingdom are at war. Kettle nodded. You see? So the world outside isn't as peaceful as I thought. She immediately objected, no, that's not it. With a determined look in her eyes, Milena described the two opposing powers, separated only by a small stretch of ruins. Although the Empire was superior in numbers and military strength, the kingdom had not yielded because its sword masters and heroes were still fighting to protect the borders. Kettle was curious. Heroes. Sword masters. What kind of power do they use? Milena tilted her head, confused. Have you never heard of mystic arts? Kettle shook his head honestly. I've never left this place. She thought for a moment before explaining, I don't know the details myself, but in this world, there exists a power called mystic arts. Only a select few can sense and use it. It's like spiritual power or mana, which, when drawn in and gathered in one's core, is divided into classes. From third class to first. A third class can sense and cast light magic with their hands. A second class can use both swordsmanship and magic. A first class can convert mystic arts into an aura or magical power. These people are usually mages, knights, or elves. She paused for a moment before continuing. Beyond that is the transcendent level. Beings who can control mystic arts freely, powerful enough to change the course of the world. Sword masters usually belong to this group, and even higher are the heroes. They are true monsters who defy all limits. Each one of them is a living legend. Milena mused that even a third-class user was considered a master in their own right, which showed just how incredible the powers of this world were. Kettle said quietly, I hope to meet them one day. Milena paused, skeptical. What did you say? But Kettle didn't answer, his gaze still fixed on the distant sky. Long Shui, he thought, I can't remember how long I've been trapped here. I only know that every day has been a desperate struggle for survival. I understand that this white wasteland lies at the center of the fantasy world I can't escape. He stood on a sharp, cold cliff, looking out at the wind and snow. This scenery belongs only to this place. Out there is the world I've longed for. Kettle lowered his head and smiled faintly, then shook his head with renewed determination, telling himself, "No, I will definitely get out." Time passed, and snow piled up on the carriage roof as the group continued forward. Mylena suddenly asked Kettle, "Are you really a barbarian?" "You could say that," he replied calmly. "From your expression, it seems you've heard of me." She nodded. "Yes. You are a legend." The answer left Kettle dumbfounded. "A legend? About me?" This time, it was her turn to be surprised. "You really don't know. Let me tell you everything." A moment later, Kettle suddenly burst out laughing, as if he had just remembered something, and casually remarked, "So that's how it was. The old emperor. He was a real emperor. I thought he was just some madman." The statement nearly made Mylena fall over. "Yes, he was the emperor." Kettle shrugged and continued casually, "Well, never mind. That so-called legend happened a very long time ago." Mylena hesitated. "Is that so?" He thought for a moment, then asked curiously, "But looking at your caravan, you're transporting a large quantity of weapons, right? Why cross a god-forsaken place like the White Wasteland?" Mylena froze, her lips trembling. "We need a lot of money." Her voice dropped, becoming somber. He was a little surprised as he listened to her slow explanation. "My family has been in business for generations, accumulating a fair amount of wealth. But due to sabotage from a jealous rival, we are now drowning in debt. This journey is to save everything." Kettle stroked his chin, pondering. "A journey to settle a debt. So you plan to sell the weapons to the kingdom, which is at war with the empire." He nodded as if he understood. "My guess was right. You said the empire has superior numbers, which means they don't lack weapons. Therefore, the one in need is the kingdom. With a scarce supply and high demand, the price will naturally skyrocket. I don't know the prices out there, but that quantity must be large enough to make you risk crossing this place." Mylena was speechless. Kettle continued, "It seems you have no other way to reach the kingdom. Your entire territory must border the empire." Mylena looked at him in astonishment, and nodded in confirmation. It was as if a lightning bolt had struck her mind. She couldn't believe it. The legendary barbarian she had imagined to be an ignorant savage was capable of such sharp analysis. She asked cautiously, "Who are you? Are you really a barbarian?" Suddenly, a violent tremor jolted Mylena. The carriage wheels shook, a piercing scream rang out, and the butler, pale with fright, trembled, unable to form words. In contrast, Kettle just glanced outside calmly, his voice flat. "Do we have uninvited guests?" Snow fell lightly. The dust was thick, and in the middle of the white storm was a living, slime-like creature with bloodthirsty red eyes. The mercenaries froze. "What is that?" Mylena's face turned pale. Someone stammered, Plimia." Kettle rested his chin on his hand and mumbled, "I guess you could call it that." Mylena shuddered. "It's recorded in the archives." Kettle, curious, asked what archives were. She explained, "Many adventurers have tried to cross this place, but only a few have returned alive. Those who did left notes about the creatures they encountered, and the hlim is the most frequently mentioned species." She asked anxiously, "Do you know anything about it?" Kettle smirked. "Of course. Its meat is tough but delicious when chewed." Mylena's face turned pale. "Wait, you've actually eaten it?" Kettle answered honestly, "Want to try some? I can catch a few." She trembled and refused, "No, thank you." Just then, a deafening roar echoed through the land. Mylena jumped. Outside, the hlim let out a disgusting shriek. The captain froze like a statue. Mylena frantically called for Kettle, but he remained silent, observing. She called his name again. Finally he spoke slowly, "I have made a pact with you. I swore to protect your lives, so I will not act unless it is truly dangerous." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Kettle shrugged. "That thing. Dealing with it is easier than eating porridge for me." He rested his chin on his hand again. "Calm down. I want to see what this team is capable of." The hlim's scream brought everyone back to reality. The captain quickly ordered, "Shields up." A soldier replied, "Yes, sir," but before the shield wall was fully formed, the hlim charged, sending one soldier sliding back before tossing him into the air. Another leaped forward, swinging his axe with a mighty war cry, but a moment later he was sent flying, crashing hard onto the ground. Blood spurted as his axe clattered away, and purple smoke coiled in the air. "What the hell is this?" someone hissed. The monster grew more frenzied, rearing up and roaring as slime flew everywhere. The captain frowned. Limbs can only move in a straight line, spread out and attack from both sides. The soldiers responded in unison. A man in a blue cloak charged forward, thrusting his spear and swinging it in a wide arc across the monster's face. It roared in anger, but then a blue light gathered in the soldier's hand and flowed into the spear. He launched himself forward like a whirlwind, piercing straight through the hlim's body. Slimy blood erupted as it shrieked in pain, its body trying to contract around the massive wound. "Don't stop, keep attacking. Aim for the mana core," the captain yelled, immediately channeling arcane energy into his own sword. The attacks continued like a storm. Finally, the captain raised his sword high and brought it down with immense force. The arcane power exploded, shattering the red mana core. The slime dissolved, leaving only fragments scattered on the white snow. The entire team let out a collective sigh of relief and then cheered. We did it. Mylena was overjoyed as well. They actually defeated it. Hiddle watched silently. The journey continued. They encountered a giant snow wolf, attacking it with coordinated strikes. One would slash. Another would block, working in rhythmic harmony. Blood splattered everywhere. When the beast finally crashed to the ground, the men were still in awe. So this is a snow wolf. Not so impressive, one soldier joked. Maybe the rumors were exaggerated. The captain snapped, don't get complacent. We're not even halfway there. Another young soldier glanced towards Kettle and whispered, is that barbarian really as strong as they say? He hasn't done anything but follow us. That's right. He's rumored to be the apex predator of the white snowfield, and now he's just trailing behind us. Hey, we should test how strong he really is. The captain overheard and frowned, clearly wavering. They began to approach Kettle. Mylena noticed the strange behavior as Kettle stood silently in the snow, his eyes fixed on the soldiers walking towards him. The first soldier spoke up. My lady, I have something I need to confirm with you. Mylena was confused. Confirm what? We have staked our lives on this mission. As mercenaries, we signed a contract with you. That is our job. Mylena faced them, her voice sincere. Yes, and I am truly grateful that you accepted this request. I will always value your help. She thought to herself, an escort mission across the white snowfield is nothing short of a suicide mission. The others all ran when they heard the details. Without them, I might not have even been able to start this journey. A young man suddenly spoke up. However, there is one thing that troubles us. Mylena was slightly taken aback as he asked seriously, that barbarian, he has never fought, has he? She froze, about to speak, when he continued solemnly, we want to test if that barbarian is truly worthy of the special treatment he is receiving. Mylena hesitated, avoiding their gazes, and asked softly, test him how? She looked helplessly at the captain, who shook his head. I tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen. Hiddle, who had been watching silently, now chuckled softly. So, you want to test my strength? Very well. He stepped down and continued casually, but now is not the time. The group was still confused when Kettle's head snapped up, his expression cold. We have uninvited guests approaching. What? Before the bewildered soldiers could understand, a deep, sinister voice echoed from behind them, filled with bloodlust and madness. Ah, weak mortals from outside the continent have finally arrived. It has been a long time since I've had a proper feast. Everyone whirled around in horror. A giant serpent was slithering towards them, its eyes glowing red, its mouth agape revealing rows of sharp fangs. Its hoarse voice boomed, give me your lives, you pitiful ants. It laughed mockingly. Go on, struggle. It will only make my meal tastier. Mylena screamed, clutching her head and covering her ears. The others were just as pale. At that moment a calm, deep voice cut through the chaos. Stop. Kettle's face was stern, his voice low. You two are my clients. Stand back. The white serpent immediately appeared before him, its voice cold. You. Why are you here? Have you forgotten the rules of the white snowfield? As it left its own territory, Kettle frowned and cut it off irritably. That has nothing to do with you. The white serpent laughed loudly. Ridiculous. I am the white serpent. You dare to give me orders, you barbarian. The one who was promised eternity. Kettle didn't answer, merely tightening his fist, preparing to strike. Do you want a taste of this? A punch that seemed to tear the heavens descended upon the white beast, causing it to shriek and struggle in panic. Whirlwinds of air erupted from the battle, making everyone tremble. The warriors gritted their teeth, bracing themselves against the overwhelming pressure it radiated. Mylena had to shield her face. My lady, the white beast is getting more ferocious, someone shouted. Mylena sank to the ground, too terrified to speak. Hiddle glanced at her, his eyes sharp as knives. I'll end this quickly. He took a powerful step forward, each footfall through the wind and snow building into a sky, iron momentum. He raised his arm, his fist glowing like the moon in the stormy sky. Everyone was stunned. A brilliant flash of light erupted. When it was all over, Kettle turned back, his breathing even. My apologies for the heavy-handedness. Please forgive the intrusion. All eyes were fixed on him in absolute silence. Hiddle replied, it's all right. Trusting a stranger isn't an easy thing to do. Outside, the caravan continued to roll through the thick snow. The biting cold made the old butler cough violently. The sound inadvertently caught Kettle's attention. He glanced over and then suddenly asked Mylena, hey, now that I think about it, I have a question. She tilted her head. What is it? Hiddle crossed his arms, his gaze studying her attire and demeanor. His expression was serious. You don't seem like an ordinary member of your clan. Why would you personally risk a journey like this? Hearing this, Mylena answered quickly, I am the eldest daughter of Velika, a concubine of the house Acacia. Hittel's brow furrowed slightly. A concubine. So you're the daughter of a mistress. She nodded in confirmation, and began to tell her past. Her mother had come here for a political marriage but was ostracized, becoming a woman with no power in the family, holding a title with no real authority. Hittel nodded slightly. You see. Mylena clenched her fists, her eyes darkening. Both my mother and I were treated no differently than servants, living at the very bottom of our own family's society. She lowered her head, embarrassed for having said too much, but soon looked up again, her eyes filled with resolve. I volunteered for this journey. Hittel crossed his arms, his voice stern. Is that so? Mylena bowed her head slightly, her voice trembling. Even knowing the risks, someone had to set an example. Hittel laughed and nodded. You're quite sharp. Mylena was a little taken aback, the flash of confidence she'd just shown vanishing. She listened silently as he continued. And you're ambitious, too. She broke into a sweat, flustered, not knowing whether to deny or admit it. They both looked out the window, where snow covered everything. As the carriage neared its destination, the captain of the mercenaries approached. He was stunned by the beautiful scenery ahead. The old butler bowed his head respectfully, sincerely thanking Kettle. Hittel then asked Mylena, how do you plan to return? She replied, we'll pass through the Empire's territory. Hittel smirked. That makes sense. Now that you've sold all the weapons and no longer carry contraband, crossing the border should be much easier. Suddenly, Mylena asked, you said I was sharp and ambitious. What did that mean? Hittel looked directly into her eyes, his voice calm but piercing. You're intelligent, and you have a grand goal. Your family was once respected but has now fallen into crisis. Even as the daughter of a concubine, if you were the one to single-handedly save the family from the brink of collapse, who in the family do you think would gain trust and followers? Mylena stood frozen, her face somewhat sorrowful. Your goal is to seize real power, isn't it? Hittel lowered his voice and said softly, am I wrong? She was silent for a long time, before slowly shaking her head. No, you're not wrong. The thoughts in her mind were as thick as the blizzard outside. And it's true, this is the common fate of a concubine's child. One must accept danger to inherit anything. She looked at Kettle with a deep gaze. This barbarian was incredibly sharp, not like the arrogant brutes out there. A man who could take down the white beast in an instant without a hint of pride. If such power were on my side, Mylena suddenly spoke up. Hey Kettle, if you're planning to leave the White Wasteland, why don't you come with me? Hittel's face went blank, not expecting such an offer. He replied slowly, not right now. I still have something I must finish here. Mylena lowered her head and smiled faintly. I understand. She quietly clenched her hand, then suddenly took out a necklace and offered it to him. Will you accept this? She smiled brightly. If you ever make it to the outside world, find the house of Acacia and show them this necklace. Hittel smiled back. If it's a gift, I will gladly accept it. The old butler also expressed his deep respect, sincerely thanking him. Hittel glanced at the necklace, a wistful look in his eyes. One day, I hope we meet again. Mylena replied cleverly, we definitely will. Hittel watched the carriage's silhouette fade into the snow, his heart heavy with an unnumbable sadness. 5 years later, the final conditions were met. A system panel appeared before his eyes. Mission 784 complete. Reward granted. Conditions for leaving the White Wasteland have been met. Hittel strode forward with courage. This was his first step into the fantasy world he had always dreamed of. He closed his eyes, filling his lungs with the scent of fresh grass, wild animals, and river water, all things that the White Wasteland never had. He smiled softly. Yes, this is truly wonderful. Opening his eyes, he gazed at the world before him with radiant pride. He had once stood in a blizzard and screamed, you damned White Wasteland, I hope I never have to see you again. And now, before him was a bright landscape, with gentle sun, a cool breeze, and endless green meadows. This was the magical world he thought he would never touch. A world full of wonders and unknowns, where magic and swordsmanship, dragons and elves coexisted. He stood in the vast grasslands, thinking quietly, if not for that desire, I probably would have died long ago. The White Wasteland is a hell where willpower alone is not enough to survive. Looking into the distance, he noticed something strange. A vibrant land appeared ahead. Hittel let out a hearty laugh. Is that a village? I finally get to see a real settlement. The memory of the man and the little girl from the snow years ago flashed in his mind. Back then, I tried to explain the importance of a proper shelter to those stupid barbarians, but all they knew was to dig holes and sleep in the snow, staring at me as if I were speaking an alien language. He closed his eyes and exhaled. How should I greet them when I enter? A classic, polite approach. Or should I ask what world this is? Hittel stood silently, gazing at the continuous chain of deep green mountains, with a vast forest in the distance, its lush leaves shimmering in the wind. He took a breath and thought to himself, whatever the case, I should approach this place courteously. On the other side, amidst carefully tended ancient trees, a skinny arm was raised, and an old but powerful voice rang out. From now on, this place will be the new home for us elves. The entire village erupted in joy. Old and young alike cheered, their faces full of delight. Standing on a high place, the elder shouted, unload the luggage. The village was bustling, with shouts echoing through the forest. A young, blonde-haired man approached the elder and called out softly, Elder. The old man turned, his stern face showing a hint of annoyance. What is it now? The young man hesitated before asking, Are you sure this place is truly safe? The elder closed his eyes, looking wary. Safe. The villagers continued to laugh and talk, their joy seemingly unquenchable. The young man lowered his voice. But this is an extremely remote wilderness, inaccessible to humans. But isn't the white wasteland right next door? The old man's eyes narrowed, sweeping over him and causing the young man to break out in a cold sweat. Are you worried that monsters from the white wasteland might wander over here? He scratched his head and stammered, Well, yes, it's really too close. The elder's face was grim. For thousands of years, nothing has emerged from there. I have erected an ancient barrier using the lost techniques of the elves. It took months to complete. It can conceal our presence, making this place seem like an ordinary forest. No one, not even monsters, can detect us. As he said this, he instinctively pictured a beautiful woman, his eyes shining with faith. Besides, we have our queen, a queen so powerful that even the monsters of the white wasteland wouldn't dare touch us. At the same time, in a nearby forest, Kettle was walking aimlessly, scratching his head. I think I tore something. And how much farther do I have to go? As his steps grew heavier, he suddenly saw a small, adorable girl, who was trembling with fear. A real elf. Kettle's eyes widened. A creature mentioned first whenever people spoke of a fantasy world, the race of magic and perfect beauty. An image of a platinum blonde elven beauty with a noble aura immediately appeared in his mind. He smiled with delight. I didn't expect to meet one so soon. Lady Luck is truly smiling on me. On the other side, the little elf girl was so scared she started crying in the middle of the forest, stammering, I don't know where I am. I went too far. I'm so scared. Kettle, with his muscular build like a giant warrior, stepped out from the shadows of the forest, bent down, and smiled in greeting. But due to his massive frame, and not so friendly face, the little girl only had time to widen her eyes before fainting on the spot. Forest birds scattered in a flurry. Kettle stood frozen. I didn't even get to say a word. It seems I should take this child back to her village. Elves are known for being an organized people. If I save one of their children, they might see me as a benefactor. He walked on with a smile, his heart pounding with excitement. Honestly, I'm a little nervous. However, the moment he stepped into the village, the entire place descended into chaos. Impossible, a human. Someone screamed. He's kidnapped the elf child. Be careful, he has a weapon. Shoot him. Kettle froze. What the hell? Before he could react, the whole village was in an uproar. A mother cried out for her child. The elder's face went pale as he shouted, Impossible. This is a forbidden area. How did he get past our barrier? A scout yelled, Elder, there's a crack in the barrier. The elder shook his head in disbelief. Impossible, the queen is currently patrolling the area. We must inform her immediately. Kettle raised his hands. Wait, I'm not an enemy. But before he could finish, the shouts around him drowned out his voice. If you don't return the child, we'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. While the elder was in complete shock, he screamed in his heart with disappointment. We've been exposed. This barrier was built with the ancient secret arts of the elves. An ordinary human could never approach it. For it to be broken, it must mean the humans prepared this in advance. How long have they been following us? Hittle was speechless. They think I'm a kidnapper. I have to explain this clearly. The little girl suddenly woke up from the noise, her innocent eyes opening wide and blankly. Hittle immediately set her down. Go on now. Go find your mother. The girl took one look at him and her eyes, Kettle's face was something terrifying. Her face went pale, she almost fainted a second time, then burst into tears, and ran towards her parents without looking back. Hittle stood rooted to the spot, his heart sinking slightly. Is my face really that scary? Back in the white wasteland, I thought I looked pretty normal. He turned back to the village. I have returned the child. What more do you want? I am not your enemy. But the elder roared, the hostage has been released, shoot him. Arrows began to whistle through the air towards him. Kettle's face darkened. He won't even let a man explain himself, huff. He tilted his head, dodging a few arrows, and sighed. So, elves are just as savage as the people from the white wasteland. The idealized images of the elf race in his mind, gentle, nature-loving, with high morals, shattered. Now, all that was left was brutality, harshness, and impulsiveness. Well, living in the wild, it's only right to be fierce, I suppose. He rested his chin on his hand, thinking, amidst the rain of arrows. Around him, They were bewildered. What kind of sacred relic is he using? He must have a limit. Keep attacking. Kettle waved his hand helplessly. I am not your enemy. He stood amidst the dust, hands clasped, frowning slightly. Damn it, he underestimated my own strength again. Before he could finish his thought, a brilliant stream of fire shot past his head, exploding in the air. A thunderous roar echoed as the entire elf village looked up in shock. Quickly, deploy the barrier. But it was too late. Elves were sent flying through the air as the space itself trembled. A world-shaking explosion erupted. The elder stumbled forward, trembling, and stammered, "What? What was that?" Hittle still stood in the same spot, though the ground around him had been carved into a long furrow. He said, "I told you I'm not your enemy." Inwardly he thought, damn, did I go a little overboard? Just then, an arrow of ice and fire tore through the wind, aimed directly at him. But Kettle spotted it instantly. A massive explosion of flames followed. For a moment, no one knew if Kettle was alive or dead. The elves stared, mouths agape and speechless. With long, shimmering hair and green slippers lightly touching the ground, a majestic figure descended from above. It was none other than the queen of the Leaf Tribe, Maria Hesen Karuzia. Holding a magical artifact in her hand, her voice rang out, "What is happening here?" The elder, leaning on his staff, quickly replied in a trembling voice, "Your Majesty, it's a human. He attacked us." The queen lowered her gaze, her eyelashes hiding her contemplative eyes. Then she looked up, her voice as cold as ice. "So the time has come. Even this place is no longer safe." As the smoke cleared, Kettle's voice emerged. "Wait, let me explain." But as he spoke, the entire village gasped in horror. It was impossible. He had taken a direct hit from the queen and was completely unharmed. From her high vantage point, Maria narrowed her eyes, maintaining her composure. "Are you also an enemy come to harm my people? Humans are truly a wretched species." Her bow was drawn, aimed directly at him. Her voice echoed like an oath. "I am the queen of the Leaf Tribe. Human, you will pay the price for daring to covet us." Hittle stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. What now? We're clearly speaking the same language, so why won't anyone listen to me? Is the relationship between humans and elves really this bad? He sighed, and his gaze suddenly sharpened. "Fine. If you won't listen, I'll fight you until you're forced to listen." Maria's bow began to glow, and a massive arrow of light, like a savage beast, shot straight towards Kettle. He clenched his fist and unleashed a counter-attack. The resulting shockwave forced the queen back, her eyes wide with astonishment. Hittle grimaced and scratched his head. "Damn it, used too much force again." A cry echoed through the forest. Maria fell to one knee, her eyes wide with shock. He's that strong. In just one exchange, she realized this was a transcendent opponent, far beyond imagination. Why would someone like him appear here? She thought. Biting her lip, she shouted in exhaustion, "Everyone, retreat now, get out of here." The villagers, terrified and hesitant, finally obeyed and quickly dispersed. "Yes, Your Majesty." The sound of their frantic footsteps faded into the forest. Maria, her face tense, remained standing. Her voice was stern. "Human, I acknowledge your strength, but you will never achieve your goal." Kettle raised his hands in frustration. "Wait, I just want to talk. How did things get so messed up?" But the queen was already muttering an incantation, her eyes fierce. "O you who holds the pure essence, you who incinerates the deep night, manifest yourself. O horned creature embracing the purest flame." A magic circle glowed, and the space vibrated. From a torrent of crimson magical energy, a creature was summoned, a dairy cow with horns ablaze with fire. Hittle froze for a few seconds, then his eyes lit up like a child with a new toy. "Oh my god, it's a real mythical spirit animal. Look, what an adorable fire dairy cow. Now this is a real spirit. This is what a fantasy world is all about." Maria roared, "Figo, incinerate the enemy before you." The fiery horned cow yawned, letting out a wary sigh. "Here we go again, summoned by the contract. It's always a pain, nothing but trouble." The queen snapped angrily, "Silence and fight." She thought to herself, the more powerful the spirit, the more arrogant and condescending they are. Normally, I lack the power to summon a spirit of this level, but thanks to a pact with another tribe, I was just barely able to. I never thought I'd have to use it in a situation like this. "Fulfill the contract, Figo," Maria said sternly, her expression tense. "The condition is to kill that human." The flaming bull, Figo, hesitated, a flicker of doubt in its eyes. "This one is a tough opponent." But then it snorted coldly, its red, hot horns spitting embers. "A lowly human dares to set foot in the territory of the elf tribe. I will incinerate you until not even dust remains." Hittle's eyes shone as he watched the scene unfold. Amazing, a real summoned beast. This is the fantasy world I've always dreamed of. But Maria's declaration snapped him back to reality. There was no escape. Even in this situation, Kettle stood calmly. As his eyes flashed, he manipulated the flow of mana, causing the aura around him to change dramatically. Pushing off with his hind legs and swinging his tail for momentum, Figo charged straight at Kettle with the force of a lightning bolt. Kettle stared blankly at the roaring, flaming bowl as it rushed towards him. Boom! A world-shaking explosion erupted, sending earth and rock flying. Despite being a good distance away, Maria was pushed back by the aftershock and quickly erected a protective barrier. She stared at the battlefield through the thick dust. An arm reached out and brutally seized one of Figo's horns. As the dust settled, Figo was left speechless, unable to believe what it was seeing. Hittle smirked coldly, his voice a low growl. If it's a beast, that's even better. I have no problem beating it to death with my bare hands. Holding the horn tightly with one hand, he clenched his other into a fist, and unleashed a thunderous punch straight into Figo's head. Instantly, a blinding flash of energy exploded, and a terrifying shockwave swept through the entire forest, the tremor extending across a vast portion of the continent. At the epicenter of the battle, a series of earth-shattering explosions rang out, the pressure so intense that even Maria couldn't withstand it, her body trembling from the aftershocks. Hittle relentlessly hammered his foe with thunderous blows. It wasn't until the battlefield fell silent that Maria collapsed, gasping for breath. She looked up at the devastated landscape and the figure standing tall in the middle of it, her eyes filled with terror. Impossible, she choked out as the man began to walk towards her. Unconsciously, she bowed her head, trembling. I beg you, please, spare my people. Her plea made Kettle pause. He looked down at the woman kneeling at his feet, his voice calm but firm. I am not your enemy. Maria looked up in astonishment, her eyes a mix of disbelief and shock. All she could manage to say was a bewildered, what? And to Maria's utter amazement, Kettle slowly explained the whole truth. After a heated debate, they were all finally forced to admit that he was not, in fact, an enemy. Maria bowed her head, her voice trembling with regret. I am sorry, human. We were too quick to judge. Recalling the determined look in his eyes when he had saved the child from her tribe, and then thinking of her own foolishness in assuming their savior was a kidnapper, she felt an overwhelming sense of shame. Hittle stood with his arms crossed, offering a wary smile. It's all right, I understand. You said you were being pursued by humans, right? Still, it's a bit disappointing that you never gave me a chance to explain. Maria was still suspicious, her eyes searching his. Are you certain you are not one of those who are hunting us? Kettle replied calmly, this is the first time I have ever met an elf. There are no elves in the white snowfield. Maria was stunned. What? The white snowfield? Her words made Kettle flinch for a moment before he gave a faint smile. The people out there call me the Grey Barbarian of the white snowfield, but that's just a name they gave me. Maria's astonishment grew. Impossible. We thought no human could survive in that place. A hint of anxiety appeared in her eyes. If you were able to leave the white snowfield, does that mean other things can get out too? Hittle shrugged. Who knows? But I don't think so. Not just anyone can leave. The white snowfield has its own rules. Even a creature as massive as that serpent cannot break them. For some reason, I was given a way out through something called a mission. His eyes took on a thoughtful look. Perhaps I am just a rare exception. Maria breathed a sigh of relief. Then we are fortunate. Hittle changed the subject. By the way, is your spirit beast okay? He seemed to have split it in two. He scratched his cheek in slight embarrassment. Maria stood up and reassured him. Don't worry. Spirits are beings of nature. When defeated, they simply return to the spirit realm. The spirit realm. Hittle frowned, then looked directly into Maria's eyes. I apologize for the trouble I've caused. But tell me, is it possible for a human and non-elf to form a contract with a spirit? Maria hesitated slightly before shaking her head. That is nearly impossible. I thought so. Of course, if there were a human who was truly and deeply connected to nature, it might be possible, but the chances are extremely small. Faced with the sharpness of his question, Maria grew quiet for a moment, then made a suggestion. If you truly desire a contract with a spirit, you should try going to Elfer Sagredo. As she spoke, she pictured a vibrant land, brilliant with life. The sacred land where the elf spirits reside. There, you might have a chance. Hittle laughed, pointing a thumb at his chest. Someone like me, a human, would be allowed to enter. Maria slowly explained, normally, no. But with my recommendation, it is possible. I will give you a map. Keep it for your eyes only. Elfer Sagredo, the sacred sanctuary of the elves. A place every scholar longed to see, and a place where a human's entry was tantamount to risking one's life. To protect that land, more precious to them than life itself, the elf tribe had never revealed its location to any outsider. A shimmering red crystal gradually materialized in Maria's hand. She placed it in Kettle's palm. Even so, I want to trust you. Please take this. He accepted it with a nod. I accept. Thank you, Maria said, thinking of her tribe's guardian deity, her expression a mix of solemnity and kindness. Of course, even if you manage to reach it, Our God will surely test you. But for you, I believe that will not be a problem. I wish you luck. Miria smiled and then introduced herself properly. I am the queen of the tribe that turns brown in the autumn, the Leaf Tribe. Miria Hasten Karuzia. And your name? Hiddle smiled back. I am Kettle, the barbarian from the White Snowfield. With that, he stumped his foot, cracking the earth, and used the force to launch himself like an arrow. His figure bounded through the treetops, leaving a series of booms echoing through the ancient forest as he sped away. At the border of North Han in the kingdom of Jin, a guard cried out in terror. What is that? What's approaching? The captain of the guard's face went pale. He immediately ordered the warning bells to be rung. Soldiers hastily assembled as a series of thunderous impacts shook the ground, kicking up clouds of dust. And then, from within the haze, a figure emerged. As his boots touched the ground, more than a few soldiers trembled. You, one soldier exclaimed in alarm. Hiddle just offered a friendly smile. Are you the guards? A pleasure to meet you. The air was thick with tension. The soldiers pointed their weapons, ready to attack if he took another step. The captain of the North Hem guard gritted his teeth. Halt! Who are you? Was that loud noise you're doing? Looking at Kettle's ash-gray hair, a familiar image surfaced in the captain's mind, the man once called the Grey Wolf Barbarian. He immediately gave the order, stay back, if you take one more step, we will attack. Hiddle remained calm, his voice steady. I would be grateful if you would all calm down. I am not an enemy. The captain frowned, questioning him. What do you want? Hiddle raised a hand and pointed directly at the fortress in the distance. The soldiers, still confused, looked back in bewilderment. The fortress. Hiddle said casually, I want to enter your territory. The soldiers stared at each other in disbelief. After a moment, the captain's voice rang out, enter the territory. Are you just passing through? Hiddle rubbed his chin. If possible, I'd like to stay for a while, but I'm not sure for how long. The captain pressed him. Do you have a guarantor or any identification papers? He shook his head. I do not. Then his expression shifted slightly as he remembered Mayana, and the token she had given him. He took it out and placed it on the table. Can this be used as identification? The captain picked up the item in surprise. The crest of House Acacia. Where did you get this? Hiddle crossed his arms. From someone with the blood of that family. The captain's expression was complex as he pondered. House Acacia. A famous merchant guild of the kingdom of Daniel. They've been rising rapidly since the new head took over. Hiddle raised an eyebrow slightly. You know of them? The captain nodded. I do, but this token doesn't belong to the kingdom of Ren, making verification difficult. However, it is still useful. He placed the item down and sighed. All right, you may enter, but on one condition. Hiddle raised an eyebrow. A condition. The captain looked him straight in the eye. We need to verify you. There are 3 others currently seeking entry into the territory. You will clear a nearby dungeon with them. If you succeed, you will be allowed to stay. Hiddle let out a soft laugh, his eyes lighting up. Forming a party. This condition is easier than I thought. He then nodded. All right, I accept. The captain continued, after you're done, I want you to report back in detail everything that happened inside the dungeon. Hiddle's lips curled into a sharp, cold smile. So that's it. You want to use this opportunity to observe and weed out any suspicious individuals among the other 3. A clever plan. I'm truly impressed. The captain looked at him in surprise and blurted out, are you really a barbarian? Hiddle nodded. That's right. I am a barbarian. The captain of the northern guard of Han instinctively swallowed, an indescribable fear rising within him. I always thought the barbarian race was a dim-witted species. You're the first to make me reconsider. He stood up, concluding the conversation. That's enough. Let's go. Meanwhile, a man with a mustache sighed in boredom. Even though it's the law having to go into a dungeon with sewer rats like these. How annoying, the self-proclaimed paladin, Alexandro Tyrannus, said, his voice full of irritation. Immediately, the thief Cassian the Black laughed contemptuously. Are you just sour because I took your money? You want to start something, old man? Alexandro's face turned red. You little brat, do you dare insult a paladin? Cassian nonchalantly twirled a small knife in his hand. Paladin, my foot. Look at that tattered armor of yours, you look no different from a vagrant. You just call yourself a paladin, you're no holy knight. The taunts hit a nerve, making Alexandro flinch, but it only fueled his anger. His hand tightened around the hilt of his sword. You bastard, are you looking to die? Cassian smirked, a strange green liquid dripping from his blade. Go ahead and try. Let's see if that rusty sword of yours can block my insect poison. The sword in Alexandro's hand glowed with a platinum light, magical energy crackling from it. The tension in the room reached its peak when a soft yet stern female voice cut in. I advise you both to stop right now. A female priestess appeared, looking reproachfully at the 2 men about to clash. She sighed softly. Do I really have to clear a dungeon with this lot? Will this be alright? She analyzed the situation. A dungeon required at least 4 people, which meant they were still 1 member short. Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed as the guard captain pushed the door open, his voice firm. The last one has arrived. See for yourselves. Everyone turned to see a muscular figure with sturdy, beast-eyed graves step in. The atmosphere in the room froze. Hittel appeared, his presence as powerful as a mountain. The group was momentarily stunned. He smiled, his voice hearty. So, you're the ones. My teammates for the party. Alexandra was momentarily speechless, thinking, he's huge. Even Priest couldn't hide her astonishment. Is that really a human? Cassian also trembled, his palms sweating. What is this monstrous pressure? Hittel waved in a friendly manner. Nice to meet you. The guard captain nodded and instructed, all right, introduce yourselves. I'll be back later. Hittel looked at the group. Well then, let's start. I'm Kittel, a barbarian from the White Wasteland. He turned to Cassian and smiled. And you? Cassian shrugged. Cassian the Black. A thief. A thief. Hittel chuckled. Alexandro cleared his throat and cut in. I am the Paladin, Alexandro Tyrannus. Hittel tilted his head. A Paladin. Can you use holy power? Alexandro was slightly flustered and lowered his voice. Normally, yes, but I'm a special case. I can't actually use it. Hittel raised his eyebrows in confusion. At this point, Priest also spoke up. I am Priest, a priestess of the god of deceit and illusions. Hittel nodded, a hint of surprise in his eyes. A priestess. It's a pleasure. But it's strange, even a priestess has such an obscure identity. Priest was a little embarrassed and avoided his gaze, while Kettle just smirked. My god doesn't have a very good reputation. So that's how it is. Just then, the guard captain of the Northern Han pushed the door open, interrupting their conversation. If you're ready, let's go. Kettle and Alexandro maintained their calm expressions, while Priest and Cassian looked slightly uneasy. Not long after, they were standing before a dark cave, a damp, cold air breathing out of it like a hellmouth. The captain introduced it. This is the entrance to the 3-story dungeon, Undead Monsters. Your mission is to clear it and bring back a crest. Hittel smiled confidently. Understood. Clear the dungeon and bring back a crest. He turned to the group. First, let's make a plan. Cassian the Black, who was trembling with sweat beading on his forehead, stammered, Oh, Sir Kettle. Hittel gave a gentle smile. No need for formalities. We're teammates. Pressured by his gaze, Cassian took a deep breath and became serious. All right, then let's assign roles. Hittel and the old knight will be in the front line. I'll handle trap detection. The priestess will be in the rear, providing support with her spells. What do you think? Hittel's eyes lit up. Excellent. Crystal clear. Cassian scratched his head and gave a forced laugh, but inside, he breathed a sigh of relief. The 4 of them formed a seemingly strong and spirited formation. All right, let's move out. But as darkness swallowed their footsteps, the initial excitement vanished, replaced by anxiety. The night was pitch black, and the wind howled through the crevices of the rocks. The girl trembled and whispered, Oh my god, I can't see a thing. Cassian was sweating, his eyes darting around in high alert. No guards, no traps. It's too quiet. It's suspiciously creepy. Suddenly, his sharp eyes glinted. He pulled on Kettle's shoulder. Wait, stop, there are monsters. Hittel frowned. I don't see anything. Cassian pointed to the ground, where bone fragments were scattered. His voice dropped. Those are skeleton soldiers. One more step, and they'll come to life. A storm raged in Cassian's heart. As I thought, that damned captain knew. This isn't a test, it's a trap to kill outsiders like me. Kettle pondered, his eyes on the skeletons. Cassian quickly explained, skeleton soldiers are not easy to deal with. They'll move even with broken arms and legs. Their bone bodies are as hard as steel, difficult to penetrate. To take them down, you have to aim for the neck and strike repeatedly to break the vertebrae. The difficulty far exceeded his expectations. Cassian the Black, with his usual arrogance, began to assign tasks. Priestess, prepare your spells. Old man, get your shield ready. Kettle, you get ready too. I'll focus on finding an opening during the fight. Even if their bodies are destroyed, the skeleton soldiers will still move, so we have to aim for the neck. Their bones are very hard, so you have to keep hitting the same spot to have a chance of taking them down. Hittel nodded in praise. Excellent leadership. I understand. As Cassian spoke, he advanced towards the sprawled out skeleton soldiers. Hittel's eyes widened as the skeletons began to move, rising to fight. Alexandro had already raised his sturdy shield. The girl in the group clasped her hands and began to chant, and Cassian the Black was in position, ready for a tense battle. The fight officially began. Hittel swung his arm, and with one punch, a skeleton soldier shattered into pieces in an instant. The punch was so fast and decisive that even he and his teammates were stunned. Hittel beamed with a smile. Oh. Cassian, you were right. You just have to smash their heads, and you're done. Cassian gave a forced laugh, his face full of surprise, but in his mind, he thought, no, that's not it. Skeleton soldiers are creatures made of bone as hard as steel. Even a skilled swordsman without an aura would have a hard time cutting through them. Moreover, they are reinforced by the dungeon's magic. The only way is to focus on chopping at the neck like felling a tree. How could he punch its head off and crush it to dust like that? Cold sweat ran down Cassian's face, his eyes tense with suspicion as he looked at Kettle. I knew he was strong, but to this extent. Is he even human? The other three were also standing dumbfounded as the battle, which they thought would be tough, ended with a single blow. Kettle cheerfully hopped on his feet. All right, let's move on. Yes, the priestess shouted. But Kettle looked at her, confused. No need to be in such a hurry. Cassian quickly replied, yeah, Alexandro and she are still pale with fear. I don't want to die here. But after only a few more steps, Kettle suddenly stopped. At his feet was the head of a skeleton soldier. Everyone called his name in confusion, but Kettle remained silent. Before him, a multitude of skeleton soldiers were rising from the ground. The skeleton soldiers are reviving. Cassian the Black also noticed something was wrong. This time, it's for real. They're charging at Is. Kettle suddenly spoke up. Can I ask you all a favor? The three looked at each other, confused. What is it? Kettle spoke with a cold arrogance. Let me handle these bones alone. I want to test a few things. Like a fish to water, Cassian quickly nodded. Oh, yes, do as you please. Kettle gave a mysterious smile, his eyes glowing violet. Then the battle began again. The skeleton soldiers clumsily picked up their weapons and stood up. The other three wondered what Kettle was planning to do. Kettle calmly and confidently observed them, muttering, this structure is strange. A skeleton soldier swung its sword and charged, but Kettle caught the blade between two fingers with ease. Then he closed his fingers, his violet eyes glowing, and began to channel a power. A strange, jade-green light emanated from the skeleton soldier as it prepared to fight. A golden light flashed, and the skeleton soldier swung its sword, but Kettle just tilted his head to dodge, grabbed the opponent's arm, smiled triumphantly, and then, suddenly the skeleton soldier's hand fell to the ground along with the sword. Kettle observed the remaining light on his own hand, while the skeleton soldier stood bewildered, its angry eyes emitting a jade-green light. It switched the sword to its other hand, ready to attack again. Kettle laughed. Haha, you can switch hands. It charged, and Kettle grabbed its other arm, breaking it without any difficulty. A strange light appeared under the skeleton soldier's feet, and it attacked more ferociously, but Kettle still held it back easily, even finding it interesting. Not a bad tactic. It can even change positions. Turning to his three teammates, Priest was trembling, covered in sweat. Cassian and Alexandro were pale, watching Kettle grab the skeleton soldier's head. A violet light enveloped his entire body. Cassian blurted out, this is a madman. Kettle smiled and waved. Cassian flinched. A skull fell to the ground. Kettle stood on high, looking down with contempt, and crushed it with his foot, saying coldly, so you can move with just your head, huh? Then he gave a faint smile. How interesting. A moment later, Kettle dusted off his hands and smiled. Sorry to keep you all waiting. Cassian immediately yelled, it's no problem. Do whatever you want. Kettle chuckled softly. Thanks. Then he turned and walked on. Let's continue. The group replied in unison, yes. After walking for a while, Kettle stopped and looked down. Cassian spoke up. These are the stairs to the next floor. They descended in silence. Alexandro and Priest looked around warily. Cassian sighed and took off his face covering. How about we take a short break? Kettle thought for a moment and agreed. That's a good idea. Cassian suddenly knelt down and kowtowed. Thank you. Kettle crossed his arms and closed his eyes to rest. The other three also sat down, the atmosphere a bit awkward. Kettle broke the silence. I have some questions about this dungeon. Cassian asked back, what is it? Alexandro also looked at him. Kettle smiled. Actually, I don't know much. Cassian turned pale and stammered, It's good to have a thirst for knowledge. Priest's eyes widened. What are you curious about? Kettle looked at the cheerful villagers walking by. This dungeon is quite close to the territory. Doesn't that cause any problems? Priest replied, the monsters in the dungeon can't get out, unless there's an exception. But it's been controlled. Cassian cleared his throat. Dungeons are originally a natural phenomenon. Sometimes they're caves, sometimes towers. They usually appear near populated areas. Kettle understood. So that's why the dungeon is here. Nodded. When one appears, the domain's authorities assess it, and then hire mercenaries to deal with it. Kettle smiled. So that means there are no dungeons within the domain itself. Replied, no, dungeons only appear at a certain distance, away from populated areas. Kettle grew excited. If it's a dungeon, There must be a reward for clearing it, right? That's right, confirmed. There's a boss on the final floor. If you defeat the boss, you'll receive various types of rewards. For a dungeon like this, the reward is sure to be quite good. Hiddle smiled. It's just like a game, huh? A game? Asked, confused. Just mumbling to myself, Kettle replied, then continued, I have one more question. Nodded for him to go on. Hiddle's voice lowered. Who creates these dungeons? Was taken aback. What? Dungeons form naturally. Hiddle imagined a single hand controlling everything. It was hard to believe. They always appeared near populated areas, as if someone wanted them to be explored. An image of a snake coiling around an apple flashed in his mind. He said, this feels more like an artificial setup to me. Was startled. Doesn't make some sense. She rested her chin on her hand, thinking. I've never thought of it that way. Tessen bowed his head in contemplation. That's a fundamental truth, how dare he question it? This barbarian. He recalled Kettle's image in the snowstorm, cold, unfeeling, with dangerously blazing eyes. Is he really just an ordinary barbarian? Suddenly, Kettle cut in. This is getting interesting. He stood up. Is everyone rested? The group jolted to their feet. Yes. Hiddle turned to leave. Then let's keep going. Yes, Cassin replied quickly. The group proceeded, everyone on high alert, while Kettle walked calmly at the head. Suddenly, he stopped, his eyes fixed on a shimmering golden object. What's this? A treasure chest, Cassin answered. It's a reward. From the labyrinth. If you can open it, its contents are yours. He imagined a treasure trove of gold and silver but thought to himself, you need a skilled rogue to open it, someone who knows how to pick locks at the very least. It's a shame, but we'll probably have to leave it. Suddenly, Kettle turned to him. Hisn, open it. He was stunned. What? Hiddle looked from the chest to Kissin. You're a rogue, aren't you? This is your job. Hassan's face fell, and he hesitated. Well, yes, but Kettle's eyes lit up with interest. Art treasure chests a rogue's specialty. That's why I'm asking you to try. I want to witness the skills of a rogue firsthand. Hassan winced, annoyed. He's not wrong, but there's a huge problem, he thought. Outwardly, he forced a smile, but internally, he was holding his head in his hands in despair. If I could do that, I wouldn't be here. A pathetic rogue like me, unrecognized by any guild, where would I get lockpicking skills? He wailed silently. But he can't. Tell him the truth. Hiddle is looking at me with such high expectations. If I fail, that look will instantly turn into cold disappointment. In his mind, he pictured Kettle, his eyes like ice, his presence overwhelming. You call yourself a rogue, and you can't even do that. Useless. He remembered the image of Kettle crushing the skull, and trembled with fear. But on the outside, he just gave a strained laugh and scratched his head. Aha, I'll give it a try. A moment later, Kettle stood behind Cassin, watching with admiration as he fumbled with the chest. Oh, you use those tools to pick locks. How interesting. Cassin felt a mountain of pressure on him, sweat pouring down like rain. He thought with a tremor, if I fail this, I am probably dead. His mind raced, recalling the image of a master rogue he had once worked for as a porter. He tried to remember every small skill, every movement the man made when picking locks, clinging to it like a final thread of hope. The pressure from behind made his whole body feel like it was on fire, his clothes soaked with sweat. My whole life is on the line here. Rogue Cassin, wake up. Suddenly, his eyes shot open in astonishment, his whole body shaking. Kettle, standing beside him, looked on with curiosity. Cassin had unconsciously activated his innate talent to open the chest. Overwhelmed with emotion, Cassin's eyes welled up with tears. Haven't it? Hearing this, cheered. Really? I heard only the most skilled rogues can open these chests. I can't believe we met one here. You're amazing. Kettle gave a thumbs up. Well done. You're really good. But Cassin was bewildered. I shouldn't have been able to open that. How did this happen? Just by watching someone else. This skill is too overpowered. For the first time, Cassin, who had always prided himself on his survival abilities, began to doubt himself. He stood there, stunned, a void in his heart. Have I ever truly tried before? And just like that, Cassin lost his pride. Detal approached the chest, looked inside, and asked how much are these jewels worth. Looked and replied, with that amount, a family could live in luxury for a whole month. Cassin was still reeling from his personal crisis. Hiddle smiled and nodded. I see. I understand. He then turned to the stupefied rogue. Cassin, you'll be in charge of dividing the reward. Hiddle's voice snapped Cassin out of his daze. He jumped and cried out, yes. He then approached the chest and gently lifted a goblet. He stared blankly at its glittering surface. Suddenly, a bewitching whisper seemed to call his name. Cassin. It was Kettle, but the call made Cassin scream in fright. Hiddle smiled. Do you need any help? Cassin was panting, looking as if he'd been caught red-handed. Hiddle tilted his head. Are you hurt? The question only made the Rog more flustered, embarrassed, and anxious, as if a deep secret had been exposed. He yelled, "No, I wasn't doing anything," leaving the other three utterly confused. A while later, after packing up everything from the treasure chest, the group continued on their way. As they walked, Kettle suddenly noticed something ahead, stopping and saying in a serious tone, "Wait." Skeleton soldiers. Before them lay a pile of bones, motionless on the ground. Kettle pointed at the skulls. "There are 4 of them. I'll handle 3. The last one is for you all." Hearing this, Kazan and Alexandro were all startled. Kazan forced a laugh. "Understood," he said, but inside he was worried. "A real fight. This is going to be tough." Alexandro also nodded in agreement. "Yes." Without hesitation, Kettle moved forward. Suddenly, the pile of bones on the ground glowed with a blue light. Kazan broke into a cold sweat. No matter how many times you see it, watching a pile of bones assemble itself is still creepy. Soon, 4 skeletons had taken form, rising as if resurrected. The group backed away cautiously. Only Kettle remained still, his expression calm. The 4 skeleton soldiers roared and charged. "Everyone, now," Kettle shouted. The 3 of them sprang into action. Kazan and Alexandro simultaneously chanted holy light, and a brilliant golden aura surrounded them. Kazan charged in first, landing a punch on the nearest skeleton. The other 3 were about to pounce when they were suddenly grabbed by Kettle's powerful arms, their necks held in a vice-like grip before they could even react. Kettle watched Kazan fighting bravely and laughed. "Now that's a rare sight. Don't interrupt, I'll take care of these." Another skeleton soldier angrily swung its sword at Alexandro, but he managed to raise his shield to block it, his gaze more determined than ever. At the same time, Kazan suddenly leaped into the air, attacking from behind. The skeleton seemed to sense the danger and glanced back, but Kazan was too fast. He delivered a clean slash that brought the skeleton down. Now it was his turn. Her eyes glowed as she chanted the skill, Cloak of Shadows. A stream of magical power transferred to Alexandro, causing him to shoot forward like a lightning bolt and deliver a surprise slash. Cracks began to form on the skeleton's neck bones, but it still wasn't dead, letting out a furious roar. Kettle, watching from the side with a large rock in each hand, laughed heartily. "I never expected to see such perfect teamwork. Truly a rare find." He casually crushed the 2 rocks into dust as if they were nothing. "The trouble's over. Time to enjoy the show." With that, Kettle swung his arm, and a powerful slash descended upon the remaining skeleton soldiers. At the same time, Kazan and Alexandro had cornered the last skeleton and looked at each other, all thinking the same thing. There's no room for doubt anymore, Kazan thought. A chill ran down his spine. This barbarian is challenging all of us. Alexandro gritted his teeth, tense. I can't show any weakness. Meanwhile, the poor skeleton, with wide eye sockets, sat silently in the corner as if to ask, what did I do wrong? But the 3 furious glares gave it no room to escape. A barrage of slashes rained down on the pitiful creature. Finally, the skeleton's head rolled onto the floor. Alexandro warily planted his sword in the ground and sat down heavily. Kazan and were also exhausted from the fight. Only Kettle stood tall, completely unscathed, his arms crossed in thought. He thought about the people of the white snowfield. Maybe they aren't so bad after all. The monsters on the 3rd floor were also skeleton soldiers, and in greater numbers, but with him there, the team passed through easily. They finally reached the center of the dungeon. There, a skeleton knight sat motionless on a throne. Upon seeing it, was stunned. Her eyes went wide and she stammered, "Ah. A skeleton knight, why is something like that here? Is it different from the others?" Kettle asked curiously. His voice trembled. "Completely different. It's incredibly strong. You have to be a true knight to even stand a chance against it. What happens if we retreat without fighting?" Kettle continued. She replied, flustered, "The guild will investigate. If we have a valid reason, it will be fine." Hearing this, Kettle laughed and strode forward nonchalantly. That makes sense. Everyone was stunned. The skeleton knight rose from its throne, exuding a terrifying power. Shouted urgently, "It's dangerous," and instantly created a protective barrier, but it was shattered in moments. Alexandro managed to get his shield up just in time, but the force of the blow sent him stumbling to the ground. Kettle glanced at the action, his face grim, saying nothing. Alexandro was shocked. So strong from just one hit. Just then, the skeleton knight attacked again, its eyes gleaming with a cold light, its next attack even stronger than the last. But Kettle just stood there, his expression perfectly calm. Before the knight could even touch him, Kettle sent it flying with a single punch, disintegrating it into dust on the spot. Kazan's jaw dropped. Was equally shocked. Kettle casually dusted off his hands. Is that all? While they were all in a state of utter shock, he turned and suddenly froze. He spotted a shimmering treasure chest. Kazan, he called. Kazan jumped. Yes, can you open it? Kettle asked. Kassan immediately shouted, "No, that's a high-level lock. I can't possibly break it." Kettle feigned disappointment. "Is that so? What bad luck." Kassan bowed his head. "It's a real pity." But then, Kettle simply swung his arm and smashed the chest to pieces. Kassan was so shocked his eyes looked like they would pop out of his head. And Alejandro stared at him as if he were an alien. But Kettle just beamed. "A big reward. Kassan, you clean it up." Hearing this, Kassan was dumbfounded. Opening a chest with a punch. "That's the first time I've ever seen that. Why did you even call me over?" After they finished, the group stepped outside. The sun was shining, and birds were singing. But as soon as they left the dungeon, the entrance behind them exploded. Kassan explained, "A dungeon disappears once it's been cleared. Looks like there were no secret rooms this time." Kettle's interest was piqued. "So they exist?" Kassan nodded. "They're dangerous, but they're real." Kettle smirked. "Sounds interesting." His eager face left Kassan confused. Outside the city, the captain of the guard was completely shocked. "What? It's over already? What happened to the dungeon?" Kettle shrugged. "It was a lot of fun in there." The captain breathed a sigh of relief. "You see." He then gestured for them to follow. They were led into a small, quiet room. So, there were no major problems. Then the captain suddenly asked, "In your opinion, should that barbarian be allowed to stay in the domain?" Hesitated before replying, "I think it should be fine." But her answer was clearly vague, lacking certainty. The captain closed his eyes, his expression heavy. He understood perfectly well that the problem wasn't that the dungeon had been conquered, but how it had been done. Because the real goal is to find the dangerous ones. Cassian chimed in. "He's not the type to cause trouble. Although he's as strong as a wild beast, he's clearly never harmed anyone, unlike a typical barbarian." At this point, Kettle began to praise each member of the team. Cassian did a great job. He's a skilled thief, disabling traps and attempting to open chests. Alejandro is also a strong frontline warrior. And Priest, your prayers helped us a lot. Hearing this, the captain became suspicious. Strange. Normally, when forced into a party, strangers would never praise their teammates so warmly. But in the end, he nodded in agreement. "Good. You are permitted to stay. But remember, if you cause any trouble, you will be expelled immediately." Kettle nodded firmly. "Understood." The captain produced a bag of rewards. "Divide this among yourselves. Don't let the guards see." Without much thought, Kettle cheerfully accepted it. Thanks a lot. The captain secretly guessed that the reward would likely remain untouched this time. Kettle then suggested, "Let's split it evenly." This statement stunned the whole group. The priest quickly shook her head, refusing. Alexandra didn't dare to accept either, and neither did Cassian. But Kettle insisted, the whole team worked together. The reward must be divided equally. No refusals. Finally, Cassian gave in. All right. Then let's go celebrate." The unexpected suggestion stunned the group. Celebrate. In the end, no one had a way out. They reluctantly nodded in agreement, though all they wanted was to go home and rest. Kettle, on the other hand, was as excited as if he had just won a major festival. The captain could only watch this scene and sigh wearily. A savage beast who kills a skeleton knight with a single punch, as strong as a knight, yet nothing like a normal barbarian. He suspected Kettle was one of the legendary barbarians, an anomaly among his kind. Soon after, he gave a stern order, "I will report the Lord. The rest of you, continue guarding the gate." His subordinate immediately acknowledged the order. Night fell, and the firelight flickered in the vast royal palace where the Lord of the Northern Han region, also known as the third prince of the Kingdom of Zhou, sat majestically on his throne. His voice was low. "Enter." The captain performed a salute, and reported, "A barbarian has set foot in the territory." That night, in the waiting hall outside the residence, the sound of conversation echoed from within the quiet room. "You've already granted him permission." The captain of the Northern Guard of Han bowed his head and replied softly, "Yes, Your Highness, but I don't believe it will cause any serious trouble." From the high, golden chair, a suspicious gaze swept down, his voice low. "Then what is the real trouble?" The captain swallowed hard, his face clearly tense. "He is too strong. So strong that his superiority itself is the problem." The Lord frowned and looked up. "How strong?" The room fell silent for a moment, only the captain's voice cutting through the darkness. "It is said he defeated a skeleton knight with a single punch." The Lord's eyes widened, clearly shocked. The image of the monstrous Kettle, holding a sword surrounded by a chilling, evil aura, immediately appeared in his mind. "A skeleton knight," he repeated, his tone heavy. "That's a type of monster that those below the rank of knight can barely face. And yet, he only needed one punch." He pondered, bowing his head, picturing giant warriors marching through a blizzard, then spoke with a sarcastic tone. "A barbarian who relies only on crude strength, a simple mind with no education." The air tensed as he asked, "He is first rate, isn't he?" The captain of the Northern Hound replied, "Perhaps so, your highness." The lord fell silent, then slowly growled, and he could become even stronger. The captain's face was full of tension as he hesitantly replied, "I cannot say for certain, your highness." A heavy silence fell upon the room. And then the lord spoke softly, as if to himself, "A warrior who has reached such a level, and he is a barbarian. A race that believes strength is everything. If we let him develop, this will become a huge problem. The immediate decision is to summon him to me," he commanded in a low voice. While the captain of the Northern Guard of Han was sweating bullets, his voice wavered with worry. "Are you sure this will be all right, your highness?" The lord just frowned in reply. "Simply letting someone that strong roam freely in the territory is a threat. I can only be at ease after meeting him in person and seeing him with my own eyes." The captain tried to dissuade him. "But your highness, that is very dangerous." A knight standing beside the lord stepped forward, his face as stern as a rock in a snowstorm. The lord turned to look at him. "I have my own knight guard." The captain was startled and looked up. The lord asked again, "What do you think?" The knight tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword, his eyes cold. "He is indeed strong, but in the end, he's just a big, dumb barbarian with no intellect and no foundation. Compared to my swordsmanship, which was taught to me by the sword saint himself, he is not worthy. You need not worry, your highness." The lord nodded in satisfaction and finally declared clearly, "Summon that barbarian. I want to speak with him directly." Meanwhile, in a small tavern on a table laden with food and beer, Kettle was taking a large bite of meat, chewing voraciously as if he were about to swallow the table itself. The other three sat in silence, watching him eat like someone who had just survived a famine. Their gazes were pale in the cold air. Kettle raised his beer mug, his face bright and friendly, took a long swig, and then smiled radiantly. "This is delicious. I really like the quiet atmosphere here. It's on me today, so feel free to enjoy yourselves." Hearing this, the three could only manage a forced smile. Suddenly he turned and asked, "You're a holy knight, aren't you?" Alexandro jumped. "Yes." Kettle tilted his head curiously. "What kind of holy power do you use? I didn't see you use it when we were fighting in the dungeon." Alexandro scratched his head in embarrassment. I'm still training, so my holy power hasn't been activated yet." Kettle's eyes widened in disappointment. "Oh, that's unfortunate." He then turned to Priest. The girl who had been sitting quietly all this time asked, "You said the god you serve is named Kalosia, right? Are there any temples to that god nearby?" Priest hesitated, her eyes evasive. "No, he is not a widely worshipped god. He is the god of lies and deceit, shunned by everyone." She clenched the hem of her dress, her voice trembling. "Sir Kettle." He looked up. What is it?" she asked cautiously. "How strong are you?" Hearing this, both Alexandro and Cassian whipped their heads around to look at him. Kettle continued to eat nonchalantly, his face blank. Then he put his hand to his chin. "I'm not too sure myself. I haven't been out of the White Wasteland for long, so I haven't been able to determine how strong the skeleton knight I defeated was." Priest was startled and replied, "You would need to be at least second, mate to defeat him. If you were first, mate, you could certainly do it like that." Kettle nodded. "Then I guess I'm second, mate." Just then, a man appeared, his hand trembling and covered in sweat. "Excuse me, is the shop closing soon?" Kettle continued to smile while the man bowed his head even lower in fear. "My apologies. Let's go." They left the tavern in silence. Kettle asked, "Do you all have any plans for the near future?" The other three immediately shouted as if avoiding a disaster. Yes, we do." Cassian also quickly yelled, "I'm very busy." Kettle looked at them with a regretful expression. "I see. What a shame. Well then, see you another time." The three of them whispered in their minds, "It would be better if we didn't see you again." That night, Kettle lay comfortably in bed with his legs crossed, sighing. "So comfortable. The first time I've slept in a bed since coming to this world." Earlier, when he went to the inn, the owner had been drooling into a cup while looking at him. But Kettle was just happy to finally have a peaceful place to stay, with a lot of rewards from the dungeon and no major troubles yet. The next morning, sunlight shone through the window. Kettle woke up groggily and wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth as he heard a knock on the door. He went to open it and saw the captain of the Northern Guard of Han standing there, hesitantly saying, "Oh, did I wake you? My apologies." Kettle frowned. "What is it?" The captain cleared his throat, his face becoming serious. "The Lord wishes to see you in person." Kettle muttered, "Oh my, the Lord." The image of wealth, power, and the luxury of a lord who ruled this entire territory immediately came to his mind. "A person like that wants to see me." His face was blank. All right then." Kettle looked at the captain of the Northern Guard of Han, and calmly nodded. "I can go now. Let me change my clothes, and I'll follow you." The captain, however, was frozen in bewilderment, with only one thought in his mind. Did I come to the right place? Why was it so easy to invite him? On the bustling streets, the flow of merchants was lively. Hittle thought to himself, when I entered this territory, it was already dark, so I only got a glimpse. But looking at it in the daytime now, it's truly magical. His eyes sparkled as he followed behind the captain, looking around and smiling with admiration, unconsciously giving a thumbs up like a child entering a fairy tale world. If this is a fantasy world, I'm ready to embrace it with all its surprises. Meanwhile, the captain's face was drained of all color, his mind in a twist. What's wrong with this guy? There's not much time left. We have to get back as soon as possible. Soon after, at the castle, a voice announced, "My lord, I have brought the barbarian." The lord gave a slight nod and ordered, "Let him enter." When the great hall doors opened, Kettle looked in and met his eyes, his hand extended in a gesture of goodwill. "It is a pleasure to meet you, barbarian." He stood by the window, one hand behind his back, the other extended politely. "I am Luck, the third prince, the lord of this land." Hittle stepped forward and took his hand formally, bowing his head with his eyes closed. "It is a great honor to meet you, the legitimate lord of the land of the third prince. I am Kettle, a barbarian." His polite handshake stunned Lot. In his mind, he had only imagined a wild, violent barbarian, but he had unexpectedly received a respectful and courteous handshake. "A barbarian shaking my hand," he muttered softly. "It seems I've lived long enough to witness the impossible." Luck cleared his throat to regain his composure. "It seems you've already mastered some basic etiquette. Please, sit down." Hittle sat opposite the tea table, his eyes observing everything. "So this is the castle of a lord. It looks just like..." His gaze stopped on the knight standing beside Luck, a young man with his arms crossed behind his back, standing tall and majestic. "Is that a real knight?" In the flesh, a wave of emotion washed over him, like a child seeing a superhero for the first time. "When I was a kid, I loved playing knight role-playing games, and now I get to see one with my own eyes." But his overly excited gaze was misunderstood by the knight. His face darkened. Killing intent. He gritted his teeth in anger. How dare he reveal his killing intent in front of the lord? Does this guy have a death wish? He immediately drew his sword. "You fool, you won't leave this place with your life intact." But Luck immediately spoke up. "The reason I invited you here is simple." He looked at Kettle with suspicion. "I just want to verify a few things about you." Hittle crossed his arms and replied calmly, "As you wish, your highness." "What would you like to verify?" Luck questioned, "Where do you come from?" Hittle closed his eyes slightly, remembering the harsh, icy land. "I come from the coldest land on the continent, a place covered in snow year-round, called the Eternal White Wasteland." Both of them changed their expressions. The Eternal White Wasteland. The lord was astonished. A place only mentioned in legends. Hittle remained calm with his arms crossed. "Whether you believe it or not is up to you." Luck was silent for a moment before asking again, "Then how strong are you?" Hittle looked at him. "That's the wrong question. I'm not familiar with the standards of strength here, so I cannot answer." The lord nodded. "You see." He glanced at the knight beside him, who also gave a subtle nod of confirmation. Luck made an offer. "Would you like to have a match with one of my knights? If you win, you will receive a worthy reward." Hittle was stunned. "A match?" Luck nodded. "Not to the death. I trust you are capable of holding back." Hittle laughed with interest. "I like the sound of that." His laughter startled both of them. In Kettle's mind, images of magical knights in a fantasy world appeared. A wonderful opportunity to witness a real fight. "I'm really excited for this." Luck tightened his grip on the armrest of his throne, his eyes fixed on Kettle with suspicion. Even though he's polite, a barbarian is still a barbarian. The atmosphere became extremely tense. In the arena, Kettle and the knight faced each other. Luck sat on a high chair, observing. "Let's begin. I hope no one has to bleed here." The bell rang. The knight drew his sword. "Consider it a privilege to witness my sword skills." Hittle smiled. "I'm also looking forward to it." The knight gritted his teeth in anger. How dare he be so relaxed when fighting me? He bent his knees, sword key surrounding him. "You will see the difference between you and me." Kettle calmly watched him charge. The knight beside Luck screamed in his mind, "Now let's see what you can do against me." The tip of the sword split into three at an extremely fast speed. Hittle's eyes widened, the sword thrust coming at him, causing him to panic. Did the sword split into three? He screamed in his mind. What kind of illusion is this? Before the three sword tips reached him, Kettle, with wide eyes, dodged them gracefully. No, this isn't an illusion at all. On the other side, the knight was still swinging his sword wildly, and he dodged each strike. All three swords are real. Is this his sword skill? After observing for a moment, he confirmed, yes, it is. The knight on the other side gritted his teeth triumphantly. You'll have to struggle quite a bit to avoid my sword. You've done well to get this far. The sword strikes became more and more relentless. But this fight doesn't need to be dragged out any longer. Suddenly, Kettle raised one hand and flicked it lightly, shattering the sword into many pieces. The knight's eyes widened in shock. What is this? Kettle placed his hand on his opponent's chest, and the armor and sword were destroyed. He then grabbed the armor, deforming it, and threw him backwards, knocking him unconscious. Above, Look was also shocked and shouted, "What the hell was that?" The knight's hand hung limp to the ground. He lay motionless in a corner of the wall, a long skid mark on the floor. Look stared in horror and fear. Just one punch. Just one punch, and a first-rate knight was defeated. How terrifying is that power? Hittle turned his back and smiled, asking, "So, is the fight over?" In the stands, the lord, as if his soul had left his body, shot to his feet, his eyes narrowed. Yes, it is. In his mind, he replayed the scene of Kettle throwing the knight so gently yet coldly. A barbarian who can defeat a first-rate knight with a single punch. That is the power of a monster. He has at least reached the transcendent level, but that is only the minimum he has revealed. The depths of his power are yet to be measured. His face hardened as he sat back down. A barbarian like that, if he cannot be controlled, will shake the entire continent. Then he thought of the brave warrior and his dragon, thinking to himself, I should inform him. One of the few who holds the title of Mirror Saint. Luck muttered, it's time for him to make an appearance. I wonder if he would be interested in a barbarian like this. Suddenly, a voice rang out. Are you talking about me? Luck was startled and looked out the wide open window. The wind blew strongly, and the silhouette of Ken appeared behind the curtain, his arms crossed calmly. Look, sigh. Your habit of appearing is as strange as ever. Ken smiled. Doesn't everyone need a little entertainment? So why not share that interesting story with me? This is the Sword Saint, Can. Luck stood up with his hands on the armrests and bowed. It is an honor to have you here, even though I gave you short notice. My respects to the great Sword Saint. Sir Can smiled, his eyes sharp as knives, while Luck bowed respectfully. Inside the knight's room, he had his arm over his forehead. The door opened, and Luck entered. Have you recovered yet? He sat up, flustered. Your Highness, I will be well in a few days. Can also walked in behind him. You should be apologizing to me, he said with his arms crossed behind his back. My foolish disciple lost to an unknown barbarian. The knight was surprised. Master. Can noticed the torn part of the shirt on his chest, but his body was completely unharmed. I saw the armor was shattered to pieces, but your clothes are only slightly torn, and your body is not even scratched. Could it be that the barbarian held back? Can analyzed with his hand on his chin, he's not a fool, but someone who controls his power with extreme precision. The knight whispered, I understand. The old man's eyes turned cold. He is far beyond an ordinary knight. He fought, while holding back as if it were a joke. He has at least reached the transcendent level. Look and the knight were both stunned. Look muttered, then asked, compared to you, sir. Can replied, he is strong, but I am the Sword Saint. Even if he has reached the transcendent level, he cannot touch me. Look nodded slightly. Can pondered again. But he didn't use an aura, and he was already that strong. That's highly unusual. Is this the power of someone from the White Wasteland? He was silent for a long time before nodding. At first, I didn't believe it, but perhaps he really did come from there. And looked up, his eyes icy. A barbarian who survived in the White Wasteland. Is he human? Or a mutant? The image of the snow serpent and the snow bear appeared in his mind, but then he dismissed it. Now, if he were a mutant, he wouldn't have held back like that. He was suspicious of Kettle's appearance. I was wrong. But he came from the White Wasteland. Why that place, and why at this time? Ken was lost in suspicion. Look beside him, was confused. Is something wrong? The old Sword Saint looked up. Nothing. We'll deal with that later. His Majesty the Emperor is the same. Then he thought of when the soldiers entered the snowy mountain, always making the strangest requests. Ken turned his head and looked away. We don't need to worry about that now. Luck was flustered. I see. Then the old man asked, is that barbarian still in this land? Luck replied quickly, yes, he said he would stay here for a while, so he must be. Hearing this, the old man also turned to leave, his face full of seriousness and curiosity. I must test his strength for myself. The next morning, sunlight shone down on a white castle. The captain of the northern guard of Han asked Kettle, what are you planning for your next step? Then he stared at Kettle, waiting. He hesitated. It must be. Before that, a bag of gold was placed on the table. This is the reward for the recent battle. And he cut himself off, then closed his eyes and announced, from now on, I will not interfere with your actions in this territory. Currently, Kettle put his hand to his chin and considered. I don't have any clear plans yet, but it would be better if I could confirm my identity here. Having to conquer a dungeon every time I enter a new territory is a real hassle, Kettle thought. The captain of the Northern Guard looked at him and made a suggestion. If you're worried about that, there is a way. You could find someone of high standing to vouch for you and confirm your identity. Or, he trailed off, piquing Kettle's curiosity. Or what? The captain continued, you could become a mercenary. He closed his eyes, thinking about the life of a mercenary, then explained, if you accumulate enough achievements, and are recognized by the mercenary guild, your identity will also be accepted. The guard captain had his own calculations. Mercenaries are just people who do odd jobs. It's hard to get your identity confirmed unless you reach a certain rank. But with this barbarian's strength, finding a sponsor would be the easiest option right now. A mercenary. Kettle muttered, his eyes shining with curiosity. There's a way like that. In his mind, the cool image of a mercenary in battle appeared, and he was lost in a daydream. Mercenaries are the ones who specialize in slaying monsters and helping ordinary people. They're a symbol of a romantic fantasy world. In that case, Kettle said with an excited smile, where do I go to become a mercenary? The captain of the North Hem Guard looked up at him in surprise. There's a guild in the city. Kettle's face was full of excitement, his eyes sparkling. Take me there. The captain stared at him, dumbfounded. All right, then. Mercenaries. Wanderers who travel far and wide to complete assigned tasks. Some see them as symbols of romantic freedom. But in reality, mercenaries are the lowest class in a society reserved for those without a confirmed identity. They are attacked by monsters in dungeons. Even powerful mercenaries often lose their lives in unexplored dungeons or are simply sacrificed for dark deeds. Because of this, low-ranking mercenaries are often crude, dirty, and loud. Currently, a man in a green shirt was angrily punching a man in a brown shirt. You bastard, you dare touch me. The man in brown fell onto a table. He jumped up, cursing. You want to start something? The man in green yelled back, come at me if you've got the guts. Others standing around cheered them on. Hey, the guy on the right, I'm betting on you. Go for the win. My money's on the one on the left. They lunged at each other, pulling hair and throwing punches. Nearby, a pink-haired woman adjusted her documents and glanced over. What's this batch of rookies like? Rosa sighed in frustration. They're useless. Just a bunch of weirdos. She was a receptionist at the Mercenary Guild. She recalled Alexandro, a madman who called himself a holy knight, then Kesson, a talented thief. And finally, there was a priestess who wasn't right in the head, and the deity she served wasn't trustworthy either. The pink-haired woman hesitated. Is that so? What a shame. She bowed her head. Disappointed. No one decent ever shows up. And these uneducated mercenaries just fight all day long. Her mind drifted to a handsome, blonde-haired prince extending his hand to her. If only a prince on a white horse would appear, stand by my side, and help me with this receptionist job. Someone entered through the door. Rosa looked up and her eyes widened in shock when she saw him. Kittle walked in, smiling as he looked around. So this is the Mercenary Guild. The two men who had been fighting stopped and stared in amazement. No way. A barbarian. The rest of the crowd also gawked at him. Seeing them all staring made Kettle feel a bit awkward. He then crossed his arms and sat down at the counter, smiling. I'm here because I want to become a mercenary. Across from him, Rosa held her documents, her hands trembling with nervousness. You really want to be a mercenary? May I ask what your purpose is? He answered calmly, I have many reasons, but I heard that being a mercenary can help get one's identity recognized in this kingdom. She explained, flustered, that's true. But to have your identity recognized through the mercenary path, you'll have to achieve quite a bit. Is that all right? No problem, Kettle confirmed. She took out a typewriter and announced, then I will register you as a mercenary. The fee is 5 silver coins. Could you please tell me your name and age? He placed the money on the table. Kettle. As for my age, I'm not sure. Her fingers expertly typed on the keys. Then I'll just put down an approximate number. Finally, she handed him a card from a wooden box. There, your mercenary registration is complete. This is your mercenary emblem. It's the sign of a mercenary. Don't lose it. He stared at it, then happily picked up the card. I've been accepted. He then looked up at Rosa, his expression completely innocent. Are there any quests available right now? I want to start working immediately. She stammered. Right away. She pushed a piece of paper towards Kettle. These are the quests you can accept. Kettle took the paper and frowned. Wait, are these low-level quests all there is? The quest board only had a few lines, gathering herbs, cleaning basements, cleaning sewers, sweeping streets, night patrol. Rosa broke out in a cold sweat, forcing a smile. Since you are currently an rank mercenary, these are the appropriate quests. She trembled with anxiety. Barbarians are usually arrogant. What if he gets angry? Should I call for backup? Rosa awkwardly explained further, if you complete these simple quests, and build up your achievements, you will be able to take on more difficult quests later. Hittle smiled. I'll take this one. He pointed to the gathering herbs entry. Rosa hesitated. Are you sure? Hittle crossed his arms and replied, This is also something that needs to be done, right? She had no choice but to nod. Yes, I understand. Where are the herbs I need to gather? Kettle asked. Rosa showed him a picture. You have to go out of the village, and into the forest. They look like this. Kettle took the picture enthusiastically. Got it. I'll be back soon. She replied with a tremor in her voice, yes. Kettle left, his eyes still glued to the picture. Rosa watched him go, bewildered. Why is he so calm? Am I dreaming? In the forest, Kettle compared a real flower to the picture, muttering, herbs for healing wounds, huh. They look strange. He grinned, put on his coat and hat, and pumped his fist with excitement. Of protection gear is ready. Time to start my first quest. An hour later, Kettle placed a sack of herbs on the guild's counter, leaving Rosa stunned. He asked innocently, is this enough? Rosa was bewildered. It's more than enough. Were you planning to destroy the entire herb field? But upon closer inspection, the quality was excellent. They weren't damaged like when other mercenaries hastily picked them. Kettle scratched his head, embarrassed. I'm quite meticulous. Rosa could only nod. Right. She handed him a silver coin. Here is your reward for the quest. A single silver coin was just enough to buy a cheap meal, but Kettle smiled emotionally. This is the first money I've earned from a proper job. This is so moving, he said enthusiastically. I'm very satisfied. Can you give me the next quest right away? Rosa screamed internally. He's satisfied with this reward. This barbarian. Kettle looked at the silver coin with reverence. It's still light out. I want to do more work. Rosa was close to tears. Why is he so happy about this? Good heavens, this new mercenary is just as strange as the rest of them. Kettle pointed to the cleaning the warehouse quest on the bank list. I'll take this one next. Rosa was speechless. After the herb gathering, this was his third cleaning job. She couldn't understand why this madman was so interested in manual labor. Does he actually enjoy cleaning? With a troubled mind, Rosa assigned him the quest. Kettle's footsteps echoed, and a woman with blue eyes in the warehouse turned to look, gasping at the sight of his bear-like figure entering with a firm voice. I'm here to clean the warehouse. The brown-haired girl with a ponytail stared for a moment before snapping out of it and stammering, yes. Is this person a barbarian? She thought. However, moving the goods in the warehouse went surprisingly smoothly. Kettle carried large stacks of goods without even breaking a sweat, leaving the girl wide-eyed in amazement. After that, he took on a street-sweeping quest. He picked up a broom and began to work diligently. At first, he had trouble controlling his strength, and at one point, he kicked up so much dust that it filled the air, but eventually, he got the hang of it. Meanwhile, someone was secretly watching from a distance. Seeing Kettle working so absurdly hard, he couldn't help but exclaim, what is this? Is he really doing that? He suppressed the thought. It's clear that if he just revealed his true power, he could influence the entire kingdom. He'd be respected wherever he went. Yet a barbarian, who is supposed to solve everything with strength, is now sweeping the streets. He watched how Kettle swept and thought, and he's not just going through the motions, he's incredibly serious about it. At that moment, Kettle was happily sweeping dust into a dustpan. Kazan was having an existential crisis. Looking at Kettle, he seems to be enjoying his work. He asked himself, what the hell is he doing? The gentle morning light shone down, highlighting the green of the leaves and a pair of sparrows. Kettle woke up and stretched, letting out a satisfied groan. He placed his feet on the wooden floor. Kettle looked at the nightstand and saw his money pouch. He stared at the bulging cloth bag and recalled the previous day. The pouch of coins had been placed in a tray and pushed towards him. Rosa had said, you've worked hard. Since your first day as a mercenary, Kettle. This is the reward for a total of 15 quests. His silver eyes and face showed pure excitement and joy. Rosa had reluctantly said, 15 silver coins. However, Kettle wasn't disappointed at all. He was still thrilled. Thank you, I'll be back tomorrow. Ending his recollection, Kettle smiled to himself. Let's start the second day in the civilized world. A cute brown-haired little girl clung to a woman's leg, crying incessantly. The other adults were all staring up at something with amazement. Kettle walked calmly through the crowd of onlookers. Suddenly, he stopped. What's going on over there? He looked at a large, two-story building with curiosity. A library. The door was pushed open, and a small brass bell tinkled. The librarian, her hair tied up neatly, politely said, welcome, but halfway through her sentence, she screamed in terror at Kettle's massive size. He, however, politely asked, may I read some books? After that embarrassing incident, Kettle successfully borrowed a book. He excitedly held up the book, which was only as big as his hand, and read intently. The librarian with her neat bun was speechless at the sight. Kessin, hiding outside, thought in disbelief, a barbarian reading a book. Even though I can't see clearly, my intuition tells me it's true. He thought, a barbarian, who is usually called ignorant and savage, is reading a book. Is this barbarian from the snowy lands completely different from the usual ones? Looking at the interest on Kettle's face, he wondered, or is this guy just a special case? Kettle closed the history book with his hand. He whispered, so the Empire won in the end. He recalled the blue-haired girl from long ago. A few years ago, Mylena came to the White Snowfield and said she was going to a kingdom at war with the Empire to sell weapons. It seems the outcome of that war was a victory for the Empire. Kettle considered the situation. The Empire currently seems to be in a position of overwhelming strength. The Kingdom of Beacon has practically become a vassal state. The Empire has swallowed half of the human world, and is still expanding aggressively. Kettle thought to himself, it's as if they're devouring this entire world. World domination, oh. Kettle muttered. Then he pushed the thought aside, his excitement returning. Well, that's enough about humanity for now. Now for what I really want to learn about. He looked at another book. This is about the non-human races. Kettle thought happily, a book documenting the non-human species. The fantasy races recorded in this book actually exist in this world. The greatest cave in the world, where rare minerals are scattered like trash. Mantumia, the quarry of the dwarves. Bizarafia, the village of the small fairy folk. Reikiperia, the floating city of the sky people. And the forbidden sanctuary that no one can reach. Ilfer the sacred land of the elves. No one knows its exact location. Many have tried to find it, but all have failed. Kettle thought, so I hold the rare privilege of being able to enter the sacred land of the elves. Suddenly, he let out a small gasp of surprise. Then Kettle held up the book and exclaimed, what? There are other places like the White Snowfield. Demon realms, forbidden to humans, filled with bizarre, twisted, and insane creatures. There are many demon realms, but 5 are particularly large and special. Among them are the Silent Forest, a place of unnerving quiet and endless fear. The Abyss, which plunges the world into a chasm of evil. The Deep Sea, where souls still breathe and live. The Void, where nothing exists. And finally, the White Snowfield. Within the demon realms exist terrifying creatures called aberrations. However, the existence of the demon realms cannot spill over into the human world. After reading, Kettle wondered, just how big is this world? The White Snowfield alone is vast, and there are so many other places. Like it, he thought. He stood up. For now, the information here is probably all there is. His movement startled the librarian. Kettle said to her, thanks to this, I've confirmed enough. Thank you. The librarian, trembling with fear, replied, yes, of course. Kettle cheerfully opened the door and left. He went to the mercenary guild again and asked Rosa, are there any quests for today? She jumped. Ah, Kettle, you're here. Rosa handed him the list. Here is the quest board. Kettle's face lit up with joy like a squirrel finding a nut. Tyson, hiding on the side, couldn't believe it. This is really strange. Finally, he made up his mind. It seems I'll have to meet him in person. After a long period of secret surveillance, the Sword Saint Cassin finally made a move. The moon was high in the sky, and the streets were deserted. Kettle walked with a satisfied smile on his face. Today, he had completed over 10 requests. Even the small jobs brought in a decent income. At this rate, it won't be long before I'm recognized as a true mercenary. He was whistling as he walked when he suddenly noticed someone hiding behind a wall, watching him. When Kettle got closer, the person stepped out, surprising him. It was none other than the Sword Saint Cassin. The two faced each other for a long moment before Kettle spoke first. You're the one who's been following me all day. Cassin was stunned. What? He thought. Kettle crossed his arms and asked, what do you want? Cassin still couldn't believe it. He had clearly used his mana to conceal his presence. No matter how sharp Kettle's intuition was, it should have been impossible to detect him. Suddenly Kettle pulled out his money pouch and hid it carefully, exclaiming with alarm, don't tell me you're a robber. Cassin felt like he'd been struck by lightning. Kettle's eyes sharpened. Looks like I was right. Even with such good security, there are still robbers. He was about to explain but hesitated. If I tell him I'm the Sword Saint, is he going to believe me? Kettle then casually delivered a fatal blow. With a body that old, you still have to resort to robbery. The economy must be in really bad shape. Cassin could only stand there with his mouth agape, feeling wronged. Kettle's face, on the other hand, lit up. This might be a good opportunity, he thought. Cassin still couldn't understand what was happening. He looked at Kettle's clueless expression and wondered, does he really think I'm a robber? He decided that the best way to understand his opponent's strength was through a direct confrontation, to see just how strong the legendary barbarian was. Cassin rolled up his sleeves, his aura intensifying. Kettle fell silent, and then suddenly vanished from his sight. Cassin was horrified. He disappeared. What? Kettle appeared right in front of him, reaching out to attack. Cassin dodged and thought, if I hadn't reacted in time, he would have grabbed me by the neck. Kettle smirked. You're fast. Then he moved again. Cassin barely dodged the blow, thinking in terror, if I had been any slower, I would have been done for. And the scariest part is, I can't feel any mana from him at all. Kettle crossed his arms, smiling with interest. This is interesting. Fasen was still stunned. He's moving that fast with just his physical body. I can't just call this a test anymore. He decided to go all out and charged at Kettle. But Kettle vanished again and reappeared behind him. His eyes gleamed as he grabbed Kassen's wrist, causing him to break out in a cold sweat. What is this? I expanded my senses, and I still couldn't react in time. His wrist was twisted back as if pinned to a rock, his entire body pulled along by an immense force, the pain so intense he gritted his teeth. What kind of monstrous strength is this? Fasen was about to release his mana when Kettle looked slightly surprised to see a blue light emanating from him. Then an explosion occurred, allowing Kassen to break free from the lock. The two stood facing each other. Kettle exclaimed, "Whoa, even the robbers these days have some skills." Kassen was speechless, screaming internally, "Why do you insist on calling me a robber?" He then assessed Kettle, realizing that he was materializing mana, an extremely rare ability. Only those who had reached a transcendent level could do it. And yet, he used it as if it were familiar. Does he really think that's a robber's skill? Kassen continued his analysis. He instinctively reacted by materializing mana, a type of mana that can tear through solid steel. Any human body that touches it would be obliterated. And yet, Kettle is completely unharmed, not even a scratch. What kind of monstrous body is this? While Kassen was still lost in thought, Kettle spoke up. You seem to be using something strange, but it's time to end this. Kassen started to draw his sword, but Kettle appeared before him, touching the hilt of the sword first, a strangely innocent smile on his face that made Kassen's eyes bulge, and his mouth hang open. He gritted his teeth, trying to draw his sword, but his hand only trembled. Kassen was horrified when he saw Kettle's eyes shining like a predator's. All he could do was scream internally, tears welling up in his eyes. Is this the end? A large hand reached out, but then Kettle let out a sigh of relief. So this is what a robber in a fantasy world is like. With that, he slung the unconscious Kassen over his shoulder. The captain of the North Hun Guard saw this, and was speechless, his mind reeling. Oh my god, what is happening? Kettle was carrying Kassen like a sack of potatoes, which only made him more shocked. Why is Sword Saint Kassen here? Don't tell me that barbarian dared to attack Lord Kassen. Kettle, however, smiled brightly and said, I just caught a robber. This made the captain's eyes widen and his jaw drop. A robber. Kettle, still carrying him, beamed. If I turn him over to the guards, will it count as a mercenary achievement? The captain stood frozen for a moment, before stammering this situation. What on earth was going on? The man who had reached the pinnacle of transcendent skill, the Sword Saint Kan, was captured by a barbarian in an extremely embarrassing and humiliating position. The guard captain said softly, that person is not a robber. Kettle's expression immediately changed, his face becoming serious again. You know him. So your accomplice is. The captain immediately stood with his feet in a V shape and saluted him with great formality. The one and only Sword Saint of the Kingdom of Genhanger. I offer my respects to Sword Saint Kan. Upon hearing this, Kettle looked down at the person he was carrying with a face full of doubt. What? Kettle was stunned, unable to believe that the person he had just been carrying was the Sword Saint. A title so noble, and he had just called him a robber. Kettle immediately growled, no way. This old man is a real robber. He attacked me to steal a few silver coins. He looked straight into the captain's eyes, refuting him. But the captain remained calm. No, he is truly the Sword Saint. I could not mistake that face. Kettle was startled and retorted, what if he's a sorcerer using transformation magic? The captain shook his head firmly. If he were a sorcerer that powerful, he would be called a grand sorcerer, not a Sword Saint. The more Kettle heard, the more confused he became. He blurted out in frustration, don't tell me the title of Sword Saint is just a pretty name for robbers. He wondered what he was even saying anymore. The back and forth continued. Finally, he blurted out, so, he really is the Sword Saint. The captain answered succinctly, yes. Kettle still looked at him in a daze and then said, I will report this to the Lord. A short time later, in the mansion, the sound of a fist slamming on a table was heard, followed by an angry shout. What? Sir Kan is missing. The captain bowed his head. I'm sorry. I should have let him explain. Facing Kettle, Kan said in a low voice. No, it was my fault for not saying anything either. The two of them sat silently facing each other, one large and imposing, the other small and quiet. When the Lord entered the room, everyone was shocked by the scene before them. What the hell is going on here? They had thought that Sir Kan would challenge the barbarian, but no one expected him to fail. The Lord's face was grim, his voice slow. Sir Kan was defeated by the barbarian. I don't know the details, but it's the truth. He looked at Kettle, and a thought suddenly flashed in his mind. So that means this barbarian is stronger than the Sword Saint. Then he turned to look at Kan, thinking to himself that even within the transcendent ranks, there were different levels. Sirkin has only recently achieved the title of Sword Saint, so perhaps he is still at a lower level. But either way, the Sword Saint was still someone who had achieved the noble title of Sword Master. And the fact that the barbarian could defeat such a person made him look at Kettle in a completely different light. A much more terrifying and uncontrollable creature. He was so frightened that sweat dripped down his forehead, his head throbbing. After thinking it over, he said softly, "It seems there has been a misunderstanding here. So I will take my leave. You two should talk things out clearly." With that, he immediately left the room, leaving Kan and Kettle to sit silently opposite each other. Kettle seemed to want to speak, while Kan trembled as he took a sip of tea and thought to himself, "This is so embarrassing, but I can't argue." It was a complete defeat. His pride was not only wounded but shattered. He put the teacup down, placed a hand on his chest, and held his head high with dignity. "Let me introduce myself properly. I am the Sword Saint, Kan." Kettle asked in a daze, "Is Sword Saint your surname?" Kan replied softly, "When one reaches the realm of a Sword Saint, one's name becomes meaningless." Kettle asked curiously, "I see. And what you just showed me, was that a Sword Saint's skill?" He seemed to remember something, and then released a sparkling green light from his hand. "You mean this?" Kettle's eyes lit up with excitement. He thought back to the scene where he had displayed his skill earlier. At first, he thought it was a robber's trick and didn't pay much attention. Now that he knew it was a Sword Saint's skill, he began to feel interested. Ken immediately explained, "This is the embodiment of Zen, also known as aura." Kettle exclaimed in surprise, "Aura?" His eyes flashed with joy, his cheeks flushed with excitement. "So that's aura." Unable to contain his excitement, Kettle stood up, his eyes shining. "How can I learn it?" He looked at his palm and replied, "Basically, you have to control your magical power and manifest it externally." Kettle asked again, "So it's like mana?" Ken began to explain, his voice full of pride, "It is the name for the essence of mystic arts. When you use it as aura, you are a swordsman. When you use it as mana, you are a sorcerer." Kettle smiled. "So swordsmen and sorcerers both use the same kind of energy call?" He clasped his hands. "Would you be willing to teach me that skill?" He hesitated slightly, embarrassed to admit it. "But I am still learning, and have not yet fully mastered this technique." Kettle refused to give up, his face looking frightening but sincere. "I beg you. Please teach me." Ken hesitated for a moment and then nodded. "All right." But then he said sternly, "But do you really need my guidance? Aren't you stronger than me?" Kettle sat down and crossed his arms in front of his chest. "I don't know anything about swordsmanship. The truth is, I just swing my sword around randomly." Ken was stunned. "Really?" He recalled the image of their fight and thought to himself, "That's right, I am a sword saint. Even if I lost, I never drew my sword." He made up his mind. "All right, I will teach him the way of the sword and show him its greatness. I will regain my pride." Putting aside his hesitation, he replied, "All right. I am a sword saint. You use a sword. Without a sword, I am just a half measure." But surprisingly, Kettle said, "I thought so. No wonder you were so weak. It's because you didn't use a sword." Ken was stunned. Kettle crossed his arms and continued, "I mean, to be called a sword saint and have only that much power. I knew something was wrong." Ken was furious. "This brat," Kettle continued, "if you had used a sword, you might have won." And gritted his teeth. "Could I have beaten him with just a sword?" Kettle was excited. "I'm really looking forward to it." But Ken was lost in sad contemplation. "I cry. Will I be able to get it back? But I feel like I'm going to be defeated even more miserably." Kettle thought to himself, "Before my regression, I trained in sword techniques, but this is the true mystical sword technique, a miraculous sword technique that utilizes a mysterious aura." In the training yard, Kan, with a serious expression, held a sword in one hand, his stance gracefully tilted. He began to teach, "The most prominent feature of my sword technique is the combination of illusion and reality." He asked, "When you fought my disciple, what did you see?" Kettle thought for a moment, and then answered honestly, his sword technique split into three, and all three were real attacks. Kettle keenly realized, "Oh, so that's what you meant by combination." He asked, "Is that a technique that relies more on skill than on strength?" Ken confirmed, "Exactly." He explained, "Sword technique is the art of blending swordsmanship with mystic arts. Those who reach the pinnacle of that path become sword saints." Then he swung his sword, and a brilliant green light erupted from the blade like life dancing in the sunlight. Kettle admired it, his eyes sparkling. "Oh, so that's aura." Ken replied, slightly embarrassed, "Yes." He closed his eyes and sighed, thinking to himself, "I still can't believe this is happening." He cleared his throat and then grasped the hilt of the sword with his other hand and said, "I think talking about the combination of illusion and reality sounds a bit abstract, so I'll let you experience it directly." With that, he focused and swung the sword forward powerfully. From a single sword trail, it suddenly split into 5 parallel, deadly streams of sword kai. Hittel thought in surprise, his sword technique splits into 5 parts. Holy crap, the remnants it left behind were a large, deep crater, the wall cracked and shattered under the invisible pressure. And continued, there are many techniques for creating illusions with aura, but only my sword technique can turn those illusions into reality. Hittel said, that move you just performed before can cut him off. Yes, it's a mystic art's ultimate technique. What do you think? Hittel replied nonchalantly, I think I can do that too. Ken was stunned, unable to believe his ears. With that naive and mocking tone, he was forced to ask back, what are you talking about? A storm of indignation raged within him. He thought, I've dedicated my entire life to the way of the sword, combining talent with relentless training. It was so hard to achieve this. And yet, after seeing it just once, a barbarian dared to say he could do it too. In front of him, Kettle confidently answered, I'll show you. And was startled to see him shouldering not a sword, but a large axe. Kettle smiled brightly, took a wide stance, lowered his body, pulled the axe back, and then suddenly swung it up with incredible speed, delivering dozens of slashes in a single beat. Han's eyes widened in shock. He's just relying on brute force and extraordinary speed. On the final strike, Kettle channeled all his killing intent, splitting it into 5 branches that simultaneously rushed towards a single point. A loud crash echoed as the wall exploded, fire flashed, and dust and smoke filled the air. Han was stunned, while Kettle casually placed the axe on the ground, a faint smoke rising from it, then turned back with a bright smile and asked, done. What do you think? The sword saint's eyes went white. He silently admitted to himself, it looks like a combination of illusion and reality, but in fact, it's just overwhelming power and speed, so much so that even I was almost fooled. He commented sternly, you're just swinging an axe with brute force. There's no technique to it at all. Hittel nonchalantly argued back, but the result is no different. Sword techniques were born to be used in real combat, right? He asked directly, as long as the result is the same, it's fine, isn't it? Ken was speechless. On the outside, he forced a calm expression, but inside, it was like a rising sea. His eyes welled up with tears. He's not wrong, but it cuts deep into my lifelong pride. He growled, fine. Then how about this? With that, Ken swung his sword, and his figure split into countless illusions, launching a chaotic flurry of attacks. His entire body was filled with a dense aura, each sword strike merging into a storm that tore through space. Hittel was amazed. Your body is splitting apart. The sword intent accumulated, growing larger and larger, compressing into a huge sphere, and then exploded violently, sending earth and rocks flying everywhere, leaving behind a deep crater at least 67 meters in diameter. Ken was panting, his forehead beaded with sweat, and he calmly declared, this is the body division technique. Only those who have reached the ultimate realm of aura control can perform it. He looked at Kettle sternly. Can you imitate that? Kettle stepped to the side, his eyes cold, the axe on his shoulder. He repeated his old move, but this time, he used his terrifying speed to a frenzied degree, unleashing countless slashes of blade intent. Han's eyes widened in shock. He's swinging the axe randomly, but each slash is combining, accumulating into a giant whirlwind. That power rose up, like a dark purple storm of rage, swirling from the center where Kettle stood. Amidst the terrifying sound, Kettle smiled, raised his chin, and asked arrogantly, what do you think? And collapsed onto the cracked ground, his body trembling, a sob caught in his throat. My life's work. All of it, vanished on this battlefield. He looked up, haggard, his eyes full of anguish. Kettle just stood there, smiling in confusion. In Ken's mind, a desperate cry echoed. My sword technique. My God, my entire life. Tears streamed down his face, his appearance utterly pathetic. Hittel crossed his arms, sighed, and said calmly, your mentality is weaker than I thought. He walked over leisurely, his voice sincere. Your sword technique is truly miraculous. Han, who was crying, stopped. Hittel looked down at him and said bluntly, I was just swinging an axe quickly. That's not a genuine sword technique. The move you just used was not just an illusion, but a real sword technique. Han was stunned. Hittel stammered slightly, I can't reach the realm of true mystic arts. He pursed his lips, and his pride reawakened. That's right, my technique still has value. Combining illusion and reality into a tangible form, only I can do that. The flame of determination burned in his eyes. My technique is perfect. That barbarian is just a madman. Han growled, looking at him. What kind of person can move so fast that they become an illusion without needing aura? That's not something a human can do. Hittel suddenly asked, can you teach me the true meaning of this sword technique? Han froze for a moment, then quickly regained his composure and coughed lightly. Sorry, I let my emotions get the better of me just now. You can understand, right? I understand. Han calmed down and cleared his throat. Then he began to explain that to perform the true technique, One must first master how to control aura. He opened his palm, and on it, a deep aura flame erupted. He then said, sternly, but to control aura, you must first understand mystic arts. And emphasized that whether one was a sorcerer, a swordsman, or a wizard, they could not advance to a higher realm without awakening their mystic arts. The only exceptions are those who believe in the gods. Kettle keenly asked, so divine power is something different? The sword saint nodded, explaining that their miracles came directly from the god they worshipped and had nothing to do with personal ability. He understood. Whoa. And continued to teach that mystic arts was the potential power deep within every person. How one used that power would determine everything. Hittle stared intently at his hand, which was engulfed in an aura flame, and slowly concluded that to use aura, absorb mana, or control spirits, the foundation of all mystical powers originated from the understanding of mystic arts. Mystic arts has 5 different stages. Ken raised one finger, his face serious. The most basic is to sense. Mystic arts. That is the realm of recognizing, discovering, and feeling mystic arts. Hittle asked honestly, not everyone can feel mystic arts, right? Ken nodded and replied, that's natural. Without talent, you can't feel it at all. He continued that those who could feel mystic arts were called third rank. Ken considered, and then explained clearly, the ability to use mystic arts is divided into 5 levels. Third rank is the first level. Hittle suddenly remembered when Myana had seriously explained to him. She had said, we usually classify them as third rank, second rank, first rank, transcendent, and hero. Those words now match. Those are the 5 levels of mystic arts. Hittle thought to himself, oh, so that's how it is. Ken continued, actually that's just a classification to make it easier to understand, because even within the same level there can be a big difference. The boundaries are not clear. You just need to grasp this concept. Hittle nodded seriously. Understand what you mean. He said nonchalantly, then let's begin. Ken was straightforward. The first step of mystic arts is to sense mystic arts. Feel everything around you. He closed his eyes, guiding Kettle to close his eyes as well. Mystic arts means awakening a new awareness that has never appeared before. Extend your senses to their limits. In Kettle's mind, Ken's voice echoed. Listen to the grass and trees out there. Receive the wind that flows through. Feel the warmth from the earth. Perceive every fluctuation in the air, even the sunlight in the sky. And among them, find a special presence. Hittle sat in meditation, trying to feel. But suddenly, he opened his eyes, the connection broken. I don't feel anything. Ken also looked at him in confusion, the space becoming awkward. He was flustered. Really? I thought with your ability, you would feel it immediately. Thinking that strong people were often more accessible to mystic arts even if they lacked mana, he had to admit that perhaps Kettle was an exception. He scratched his chin, his voice low. Perhaps it's due to the White Emperor's nature. Hittle thought of his homeland and sighed. No one around me has ever felt what is called mystic arts. The people of the Emperor's land are like that. He nodded and then explained, the vast majority of people can't easily access mystic arts either. Let me try to transfer energy directly into you to open a path to mystic arts. Kettle's eyes widened in admiration and excitement. Are you going to transfer your internal energy? He nodded seriously. Kettle was excited and pointed to himself. Alright, I'm ready. Then went behind him and reminded him, now, relax. Focus on your inner self. He placed his hands on Kettle's back. Receive my magical power. But as soon as he touched him, Ken was shocked, his expression darkening. Is he really human? Kettle's body was as stiff as a solid block of stone. He withdrew his hands, startled. Sorry, my mind wandered. Then he seriously transferred his energy. I will activate your internal energy flow. The key is to awaken the path to mystic arts within you. Finding it is the goal. It's not usually that difficult. Ken froze, his eyes wide with confusion, his body as if frozen. Kettle, on the other hand, sat calmly with his arms around his knees, smiling and waiting. I can't find the path to mystic arts in his body. Or rather, I can't even touch it. In Ken's mind, a scream echoed. He felt as if he were being submerged in a deep, bottomless stream of water. No matter how much internal energy he used, he couldn't make contact with anything. It was like swimming in a dark abyss, and being crushed by the pressure at the bottom. Finally he closed his eyes, panting, and muttered, this is not good. His desperate voice startled Kettle as well, his face stunned as if struck by lightning. What do you mean? Are you saying I have no talent? Ken quickly explained, no, that's not it. It's just that transferring internal energy into you is not enough. To find mystic arts, you have to open the path within yourself, to awaken the sleeping power. Hittle sat on the ground, his eyes wide in disbelief. Are you saying I can't access mystic arts? Ken slowly reached out his hand and replied calmly, not exactly. I can't even determine if it exists or not. Hittle frowned. What do you mean? Ken sighed and affirmed, your body has been injured. The internal energy must penetrate deeply to find mystic arts. but your physique is too dense. Even I can't penetrate it. In his mind, an image of an energy stream trying to push a rock pinned to the bottom of the sea but failing to move it flashed. I've never seen anything like this. A pure physique that obstructs internal energy. Yes. Hittel closed his eyes in frustration, his heart heavy. Even a sword saint is at a loss. He asked sadly, so I'll never be able to learn mystic arts? And said with a heavy voice, I can't say for sure in either direction. There are two paths for you. Either find a sword saint who understands internal energy better, or go to the mage tower. He bowed his head and touched his hand to his chest sincerely. In any case, I'm sorry. Hittel stood up on his knees, his expression thoughtful but still smiling. It's all right. Thanks to you, I've learned many things. I appreciate it. The words left him speechless. He couldn't help but remember the barbarians he had met before, all of them fierce, plundering, and living by violence. But the man in front of him was completely different. He stared at him intently, and suddenly asked, Have you ever thought of joining this kingdom? I'm talking about pledging allegiance and receiving a title. With your strength, you would rise very high. I'm even willing to be your sponsor. Hittel clenched his fist, feeling it was an interesting offer, but then he bowed his head and shook it gently. I refuse. I don't want to be tied down. To fight against the Empire, if it can't recruit him now, there will be other opportunities, Kazan thought. Yet Kettle had casually refused. He was baffled. Even the title of Sword Saint doesn't appeal to you. That's not enough. Kettle crossed his arms, smiling with a sense of freedom. I choose to enjoy my own freedom. Essen, taken aback, finally understood and nodded stiffly. Is that so? I understand. Hittel offered a friendly smile and extended his hand. Thank you for the offer, anyway. I won't forget this kindness. Essen's eyes fell as he walked down the silent corridor, his heart heavy with shame. He cursed himself for his foolishness in thinking he could control that man. He only acts according to his own ideals. He's willing to cooperate, but only to a certain extent. His heart follows a path of its own choosing. Essen recalled Kettle's refreshing answer. The more he thought about it, the more enigmatic Kettle seemed compared to any other barbarian. A man from the harsh, barren lands of the White Wastes, a place whose people were considered demons, yet he possessed such a spirit. Essen muttered to himself, looking up at the cold moonlight, a shiver running through him. The Emperor wants to invade the demon realm. What is he plotting? In a dimly lit room, a figure sat at a table, chin propped on a hand, full of doubt. His voice was low. Is it true? Does the Emperor really want to conquer the demon realm? Essen sat opposite him, his arms crossed, a look of dissatisfaction on his face. People have sacrificed their lives under the guise of reconnaissance, yet you still don't believe it, and have to confirm it again. He bowed his head and sighed, his voice firm. Of course it's true. Perhaps he believes he is the reincarnation of an ancient emperor, but, regardless, that is still in the future. Essen's expression was grave, his voice like ice. We haven't even gained control of the entire human domain yet. The figure nodded, a sharp glint in his eyes, understanding it was only a matter of time. Essen looked up and emphasized, if this land falls to the Empire, we could be summoned at any time. It's best to be prepared. The figure simply replied, thank you. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted, his heart heavy. The times were already chaotic, and now the Emperor was half mad. It was a real headache. Hearing this, the figure's eyes suddenly turned cold. Could the rumors be true? Essen nodded affirmatively. Yes. The demons have started to mobilize their armies. The figure's eyes widened, his heart pounding. Essen recalled the monstrous creatures, the bizarre hellish eruptions. The reports indicate that the rifts to the demon realm have started to leak. Demons and the white serpent have also appeared. Although it's not confirmed, it's clear that a disaster is about to befall humanity. He paused, muttering, on second thought, perhaps the strangest thing has already appeared among us. The figure lowered his head and thought. Essen, what do you think? I don't know, the figure said, shaking his head. But as a thought stirred in his mind, an image of Kettle appeared, his crazed eyes, his bestial aura. He is no ordinary opponent. Essen said slowly, beyond that, I can say no more. The next morning, the sun shone on the city. Kettle strolled along, feeling cheerful, but was surprised to see a woman clutching a child, trembling as she looked at him with fear. He looked back, confused, and saw a man also pressed against a wall, avoiding him. Kettle touched his chin, thinking, are they scared of me because of my clothes? He remembered showing off his new shirt to a couple, and they had also looked at him with avoidance. Maybe I need to wear something more presentable. An animal skin shirt doesn't exactly scream a gentleman. He frowned, determined. All right, time to buy some decent clothes. At the clothing store, the doorbell tinkled. The shop owner, who was dressing a mannequin, turned around and went pale and trembled at the sight of Kettle. Kettle's cold, murderous aura unconsciously spread. I need to buy some clothes. The owner stammered, I am sorry, but we don't have anything in your size. Kettle crossed his arms, annoyed. What a pain. So there's no other way. The owner bowed his head, his voice trembling. If you're willing to wait, our shop can take custom orders. Hiddle laughed with delight. Oh, is that so? Do it. Yes, of course, the owner replied hastily. We'll notify you when it's ready. Internally, he was terrified, imagining Kettle getting angry and tearing the clothes to shreds. He dare call this clothing, the thought made him break out in a cold sweat, unsure if he would survive. On his way back, Kettle suddenly bent down. What's this? At his feet was a green gem. He picked it up and held it to the sunlight. It sparkled strangely. A gem. He put it in his pocket, muttering, I'll take it to the guild to have it checked out. At the guild, Kettle placed it in front of Rosa, the receptionist. Do you know what this is? Rosa looked at it, momentarily dazed, then carefully picked up the gem. She observed it. It wasn't a gemstone. The surface was smooth, as if someone had painstakingly carved it. Her eyes gradually glazed over, and she muttered, Why does it feel so valuable? Suddenly, Kettle snapped his fingers. Rosa jumped, gasping for breath. He raised an eyebrow. Are you all right? What do you mean? She asked, confused. Hiddle smiled. You looked like you were hypnotized by the gem. Hearing this, she was still dazed. Hiddle changed the subject. Never mind. Forget it. Rosa then looked at the stone, flustered, and suggested, Still, this orb is very strange. I feel a bizarre energy coming from it. Would you like me to have an expert appraise it? He smiled enthusiastically, and refused. Thank you, but I'll figure it out myself. That's the fun part. He then changed the subject again, crossing his arms and smiling. By the way, is there any work for today? She quickly caught on. Yes, please wait a moment. I'll get the quest board. Rosa placed the quest board on the counter, and pushed it towards him. Rank quests, sweeping streets, clearing drains, weeding, digging potatoes. Hiddle's face lit up with excitement as he took the quest board. That night, a bag of money was placed on the table. Hiddle lay with his hands behind his head, smiling happily. Another glorious day. He then took out the green gem and looked at it. But seriously, what is this? He recalled how Rosa had been captivated by the gem. Rosa looked like she was about to go crazy over it. His expression grew suspicious. Could it have some kind of function? His eyes widened. A voice echoed in his mind, causing him to jump to his feet. The gem also emitted a black aura. Come to me. Kettle was bewildered. Why did I just hear a voice from the orb? He then, without his clothes, curiously followed the gem into the night. It kept repeating, Come to me. Come to me. Come to me. This left him confused. Where is it trying to lead me? He closed his eyes, and thought of the arrows that had appeared in his head, showing him the way. And now, it was showing a map in his mind. The type of control magic. Kettle looked at the gem in his palm, which was emitting a black aura. It urged him, Come to me. He then calmed down. Returning to his room, he looked out the window beside it. Well then, let's go. At a bush, Kettle pushed it aside. The voice still echoed. Come to me. He sighed. It said I'm coming. Shut up. He stood before a path, and then looked up. In front of him was a pitch-black cave. Is this the place? Hiddle smiled. Inside, a skeleton's blue eyes also opened. Sensing his presence, the voice still rang out, Come to me. He fearlessly entered the cave. Am here. The one behind the voice was revealed. In a chamber, amidst chains, a monitoring energy made his image appear. Another sacrifice has entered. This time it's a foolish barbarian. At least he's big enough. The gem on the staff glowed, and the skeleton grinned with satisfaction, its body emitting a blue light. That makes 10 living beings. He sat in a magic circle, one hand holding a staff, the other channeling energy. Behind him was an altar. He wondered, this must be an illusion. Can it even perform a resurrection? In the past, a time of chaos when many kingdoms fell, behind it all was an evil sorcerer who manipulated and stirred up emotions. He had controlled the minds of countless kings, causing wars and ruling over kingdoms. But his ultimate evil was finally exposed, and he was defeated by heroes. However, just before his defeat, he transferred his soul into a living vessel, allowing him to become a lich. In the form of a necromancer, an immortal entity with its soul inside a living vessel, he was immortal until the vessel was destroyed. He laughed maniacally, a skeletal hand raised as if to manipulate. And so the evil wizard who had once conquered the world became a lich and began to plot his own resurrection. His dark magic roamed every street and alley. The resurrection ritual required a large amount of life force. He settled near a remote estate and scattered enchanting orbs to gather sacrifices. Little by little, the orbs acted as the mana core needed for the resurrection ritual. The stone glowed with a sparkling light amidst the deadly, evil aura. And with his immense power, he planned to conquer the world once again. Arrogant and ambitious, that goal was close to being achieved. His deep voice suddenly spoke. Why is a barbarian here? The peaceful village scene held abundant life force. This is a remote domain, and I chose it because I need to gather power. A secluded place, away from the prying eyes of the public. He mused, that's why a barbarian being here is unusual. Kettle's blurry image was projected. The Lich looked at the magical flame that was tracking Kettle, calculating. The creatures from the north have come quite a long way. Based on your size, you'll make an excellent sacrifice. I've placed a special effect on the orb. It only enchants those who do not know its secrets. His skeletal hand released a magic orb into the cave. Therefore, whoever is enchanted by the orb here will not understand its secrets. The Lich looked at Kettle's carefree smile and concluded, so in the end, this barbarian is just an ordinary, ignorant fool. The fact that he doesn't seem to be enchanted must be an illusion. He was overjoyed. Come here, barbarian. Become a stepping stone for my glorious resurrection magic. Time passed. So this is the place. Kettle stood before a large wooden door, probably twice his height. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. Kettle's eyes whitened in surprise. The Lich's black eye sockets glowed, and its skeletal hand tightened around its staff. The sorcerer stood leisurely on a high platform, having waited for him for a long time. Kettle was speechless. It's a real Lich, he thought in amazement. In his imagination, a Lich in black robes and holding a staff looked like a priest of an ancient civilization, the pinnacle a top-tier mage could achieve. An entity that always appeared in fantasy stories as a villain. I never thought I'd meet a real Lich. The Lich, seeing him standing there like a fool, asked doubtfully, who are you? Don't tell me you weren't enchanted by the orb. Kettle finally came to his senses and laughed, realizing. So that's how you lure people here. The ground was littered with white, broken skeletons. He fell silent. The Lich was confused by the situation. What's going on? I don't sense any mystery from him, which means he's just an ordinary barbarian. If that's the case. His voice was a mocking, hoarse whisper. You must have brought a mind-protecting artifact with you. A high-level artifact that I can't even sense. I don't know how a barbarian got something like that. But the Lich's voice was jeering. It seems you got lucky and picked it up somewhere. I don't have anything like that, Kettle said, refuting the claim. But the Lich didn't believe him. You think you can fool me? With that, he began to channel his magic. The stone on top of his staff emitted streams of curving white light. They shot down into the skeletons, making them tremble. He continued, if you had obediently let my mystery enchant you, you would have died a peaceful death. But now, I will annihilate you. The Lich growled fiercely. Instantly, the white skeletons on the floor clattered to their feet. His voice was cruel. My soldiers. With that, a skeleton soldier holding a sword roared and charged forward. Kettle smirked, thinking, a dungeon. With a hidden evil Lich. Ah. A mocking curve formed on his lips, and he laughed coldly. I roughly understand what's happening here. The skeleton soldier leaped aggressively, its eye sockets filled with a cold aura. Its sword was about to come down, but before it could, and without anyone seeing when Kettle moved, he had already, with a cold face, slapped it straight in the head. The Lich jumped. The skeleton soldier immediately fell to the side, its skull shattering into 3 pieces before crumbling into dust. Kettle waved his hand nonchalantly, his voice as cold as a judgment. You're shallower than I thought. For a moment, the Lich was stunned, clenching his teeth. But he quickly regained his composure and roared arrogantly, let's see if that mouth of yours is still talking nonsense after your limbs are cut off. With that, he raised his hand, and a torrent of magic surged through the skeletons, bringing them to life. His voice was hoarse. As long as you're alive, that's all that matters. Get him. Instantly, the entire horde of skeletons charged. Kettle clenched his fists. The sound of bones cracking echoed as he swung his fist, cold-faced. One on the right took a direct hit and fell backward. His left hand violently crushed the head of the one on the left. Then he kicked the one in front of him, sending it flying into the wall. It was as if his fists were locked onto the skulls of the skeletons. Every punch was a direct hit, a one-hit kill. The Lich's jaw dropped in horror as he watched each skeleton disintegrate. Kettle stood up straight, his voice calm. Just as Kazan said, if you lose your head, you die. He casually ran a hand through his hair, glancing at the Lich with contempt. A Lich this weak? I thought you could at least command a Death Knight or a zombie. This sentence was like a direct stab to his chest, a critical hit that pierced through his armor, making the Lich tremble. He gritted his teeth, his voice heavy. You bastard, I've played around enough. Instantly, the magic stone on his staff glowed brightly. A torrent of mana enveloped a skeleton, creating phantom armor, a helmet, a shield, and a sword, forming a complete skeleton knight in front of him. Kettle was slightly startled, a mix of surprise and interest on his face. A skeleton knight created by a Lich. Interesting. The knight exuded a powerful aura. It leaped forward, swinging its sword. Kettle smiled faintly. I'm curious to see how it fights. In an instant, he had rushed forward and landed a punch straight into its stomach. The explosive fist sent the skeleton knight flying, crashing into the stone wall. Dust and smoke billowed, and pieces of armor clattered everywhere. When the smoke cleared, the knight's figure was still standing, its armor cracked, but its warrior's will to fight to the death made even Kettle nod. I admit, you're taller than I thought. The Lich's eye sockets glowed a bright green. He said in a low voice, now, face my ultimate dark magic. Streams of mana coiled around the skeleton knight, regenerating it and making it several times stronger. Another skeleton soldier charged forward. Hiddle frowned. What's this now? A skeleton knight created by a lich is a bit unusual. He clenched his fist, then swung it straight at its face. The skeleton soldier was immediately sent flying backward. A violent explosion erupted, and smoke and dust filled the space. Hiddle seriously observed the situation, while the lich was startled and horrified. It took a long time for the smoke and dust to clear. Hiddle slammed his heel down on the skeleton's hand, his voice cold. It's unusual, but it doesn't seem to be much different. Is that all? Who are you? The lich demanded. His mind was in turmoil. I can't sense any mystery or magic from this barbarian at all. If he were using an artifact, I should at least be able to sense some mana. But no, there's nothing. Is this pure strength? He defeated a skeleton knight with just his fists. How is that possible? You are special, the lich rasped. Hiddle was slightly startled, narrowing his eyes at him. The lich's skeletal hand tightened around its weapon, his voice a hissing growl. Very well, I will face you myself. Consider it an honor. Instantly, a wave of darkness spread out, enveloping the entire space. Hiddle was stunned as the world around him was plunged into thick darkness. In the darkness, two bright green eyes appeared, and the lich's voice echoed in his mind. Are you afraid? Tremble, you who have trespassed upon my sacred ground must pay the price. But Kettle just replied nonchalantly, no, I only came here because the orb called me. Weren't you the one who released it? Those words made the lich tremble slightly, a cold sweat breaking out. Yes, that orb was the mana he had dispersed to lure sacrifices. But he immediately roared insanely, silence, I am the great sorcerer who destroyed the southern kingdom and fought against heroes. I am supreme. Hearing this, Kettle suddenly remembered that girl. The name that echoed in his memory, the elf queen Maria Hazia Karuzia. The lich erupted with dark power, plotting to resurrect his true body. A disgusting wave of magic shot towards Kettle. The dark magic wave was overwhelming, terrifyingly fantastical, but he still looked straight at it calmly. Hiddle's eyes spun. In an instant, he recognized it as emotion, controlling magic, something that would swallow the victim's mind in despair until their soul shattered. A signature magic of a lich, extremely cruel for the small amount of mana it consumed. Against a normal barbarian, he would be helpless, completely powerless against that flood of magic. But Kettle still stood, and the lich, seeing this, was terrified. He frantically calculated, why isn't this guy falling? He's not wearing any artifacts, nor is he emitting any mana. So this is really. He snapped his fingers and ordered, take him. Study him. Drag him down. Instantly, the decrepit skeleton stood up again and charged. But Kettle had already turned, delivering a lightning-fast kick that sent a skeleton's head flying. Hiddle's expression was incredibly calm. The lich was so shocked its jaw almost dropped. A large explosion erupted, leaving it in a state of disbelieving panic. No, how? That mind control spell should have been effective. Kettle spoke nonchalantly, you're just going to stand there and watch. Are you planning to use those skeletons to capture me again? How boring. His expression was full of disappointment, and he even let out a sigh. Those words were like an arrow straight to the Demon King's chest. Humans are creatures that act based on emotions. Even the supernaturally powerful still have negative emotions deep down. That's why they can't escape emotion, controlling magic. Yet Kettle tilted his head and asked, can't you use magic like fireballs or magic missiles? The lich growled in response, I don't know how you're still standing, but how dare you compare my magic to those low-level spells? His eye sockets blazed as an aura erupted around him. Oh, murky stream, whatever your form, devour the world and bring chaos to the unseen realm. As he spoke, he raised his scepter, and a torrent of mystical power surged forth. Seeing this, Kettle wasn't worried. Instead, his eyes sparkled with interest. The eerie power spread throughout the space as skeletal hands reached out to swallow everything. Kettle stood motionless, even as it was about to hit him. As the magical torrent washed over him, Kettle's body gradually vanished into thin air. The lich threw its head back and roared, ha ha ha, victory is mine. He cackled madly, but a moment later, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. His body slumped to the ground as he gritted his teeth in pain. I overdid it. I've used everything, with just enough mana left to maintain my body. With that spell, he's definitely gone for good. But just then, Kettle's voice rang out, shaking him to his core. Impressive. He appeared nonchalantly right in front of the lich, asking coolly, but is that all you've got? The lich was horrified, its expression twisting in a grotesque mask of terror. A silent scream echoed in its mind. Even that spell didn't work. I unleashed my most powerful dark magic, the ultimate mind control incantation. Even a great hero facing it directly would have their mind shattered. And yet this barbarian is completely unfazed. What kind of monster are you? Kettle looked down at his own hands, his voice flat. That spell was impressive, truly, but I didn't feel any different. If that was your strongest attack. As he spoke, he drew his weapon, his eyes cold as he raised the axe. I guess it's my turn now. The Lich shrieked in panic. Stop. Kettle raised an eyebrow. What is it? The Lich snarled, you came here already knowing who I am. It's obvious. Kettle only grew more bewildered and confused. What's wrong with this guy? The Lich suddenly burst into exhilarated laughter. Ha ha ha, Empire, are you that afraid of me? I must admit, your intelligence network is formidable to have found me so quickly. But I will return. I will destroy your sword and rule the world once more. I've heard the Empire has a training school for aberrants. A place that produces countless freaks. That barbarian is surely a product of it, an assassin sent to eliminate me. But no matter, I am Ketta's Bransom Lessie. I will destroy the barbarian and overthrow the Empire. Kettle stood there dumbfounded, his head full of question marks. Is he insane? At that moment, an unseen vessel began to radiate power. As Kettle grew more confused, the Lich roared, offer your body to me. A stream of energy shot straight at Kettle. His vision went white, his mind still a blank. The Lich calculated in its mind, I have invaded the barbarian's body. I will devour his soul. If I can't become a Lich again after this, I will be trapped in this body forever. I have no other choice. He. The Lich was triumphant. This body is now mine. And now. But as the scene shifted to Kettle's inner consciousness, the Lich felt that something was terribly wrong. Eve, what is this? What is this place? Is this the barbarian's inner world? I've never witnessed anything. Something is wrong here. Just standing here is enough to drive my mind to chaos and shatter it. Horrifying images appeared, and the Lich clutched its head, screaming in agony. This isn't the Empire. Even the Empire couldn't create something like this. At that moment Kettle appeared like a giant manipulating him, and everything descended into chaos. The Lich was in a state of utter panic. No, my. It's collapsing. That was the last thing it screamed. Outside, Kettle scratched his head with a blank expression, wondering what had just happened. He did something to himself and then suddenly collapsed. That black vortex looked pretty strong, but that was it. Art Lich is supposed to be the highest evolution of mages. I was so curious what kind of magic he would use. His hand tightened, his expression serious as he remarked, turns out Liches in this world aren't so scary after all. In any case, I've cleared the dungeon. Now it's time for the reward. Saying this, Kettle bent down and picked up the magic staff. This thing lit up when he chanted. Does it help cast spells? If I had this, could I use magic? He wondered. Suddenly Kettle broke the blue stone off the staff, his face blank again. A second later, he smiled cheerfully and pocketed it. Better to put this away. Then his eyes lit up. Since it belonged to the Lich. Could this be a soul vessel? He bent down and picked up the jar rolling on the floor, holding it up as he thought to himself, I should ask Rosa. Then he glanced around. All right, I think I've collected enough rewards. But something felt off. His eyes widened. Before him was a large circular symbol on the wall. Kettle curiously reached out a hand to touch it. What's this? A hidden room. His finger pressed a spot, and immediately a hidden door activated. The stone wall trembled, and then crumbled down. A stunned Kettle stepped inside. Within were rows of people, no longer conscious, but still standing firm. There were so many of them. This was the Lich's secret sacrificial chamber. Kettle's eyes went wide, and sweat broke out on his brow. So it was true. But he continued to step forward to observe, wondering, who are these people? He waved a hand in front of one person. Hello. Then he called to another, is anyone there? No one responded. He rubbed his chin in thought. What should I do now? Finally, he decided to turn back. All right, for now I'll return to the territory. After I report this, they'll send someone to handle it. As he walked, he happily calculated his earnings. Soon, Kettle was back in the territory. The bell rang as he entered. Rosa, who was sitting at her desk, was surprised to see him and quickly stood up to greet him. Sir Kettle, you're back. Early today. Kettle smiled and replied, there were just a few things to take care of. Rosa was skeptical. What things? He gave a mysterious smile. Related to that orb from yesterday. Rosa sighed. Sir, please don't joke around. Kettle's voice became serious. I'm not joking. She just laughed it off, not believing him. A Lich. One of only 5 such beings in the entire world, appearing in this remote place. Unlikely. But Kettle placed the vessel on the table in front of her, stunning Rosa into silence. Her eyes went wide as his own burned brightly. I brought back a vessel that looks like a Lich's soul phylactery. Can you take a look? Rosa was frozen as if turned to stone, her expression grave, her heart filled with terror. He's not joking. Rosa gaped in astonishment at the dark vassal. What is going on? Hittel suddenly remembered and added, oh, and one more thing. There are still a few other people in there. I was going to bring them out, but their minds were completely gone, so I had to leave them. It would be best if the guild sent someone to deal with it. After hearing this, Rosa was stunned into silence, her eyes wide with shock. She recalled the recent disappearances in the territory, cases that had gone cold. If the cause was a lich. Just the thought sent Rosa into a panic and she slammed her hand on the table. Wait right there, I'll call someone immediately. Soon after, the captain burst in, shouting, what in the world happened? A lich. Are you telling the truth? Hittel, looking blank, raised a hand in a polite greeting. Oh, hello. Then he said nonchalantly, everything's been taken care of. There's nothing to worry about. The captain was astounded. Wait. What do you mean? Hittel briefly recounted the entire story. The captain screamed in horror. That was Brensum Lass. Was that his name? Hittel nodded. Yeah, I think that was his name. You know him. The captain's face was pale with panic. Of course, I know him, Kedos. Bransum Less, a sorcerer who threw the entire world into chaos over a century ago, the creator of mind, annihilation magic, he caused havoc everywhere. He drove kings insane and made them slaughter each other. 5 kingdoms fell because of him. And he appeared here, as a lich. Is this for real? Hittel scratched his head innocently. Yes, but he wasn't that scary. Just a sneaky guy who played some tricks and then died on his own. The captain was speechless. You. What are you talking about? 1,000 questions swirled in his mind. How could a sorcerer like Kedos's body self-destruct? I need a clearer explanation. Kettle rubbed his chin. Even if you ask, I don't have anything more to say. The captain was silent, his mind in turmoil. Finally, he just said, wait here for a moment. I will report to the Lord. A few minutes later, the shock still lingered. What the hell is happening? A lich, right near the territory. It must be another kind of monster, but the evidence is too clear. The soul phylactery is right in front of him. He trembled. A lich of that caliber hiding near the territory without anyone knowing. The Empire might send an inquisitor at any moment. And Sirkin isn't here right now. This is a real mess. Not thinking any further, he slammed his hand on the table and shot to his feet. Prepared to send a letter reporting everything to the capital, the subordinate watched his back, and then glanced out the window. Yes, sire. He then whispered, but perhaps we were still lucky. The captain nodded in agreement. That's right. If that barbarian hadn't found him, I fear we would have been the first victims. The ghostly image of Kedas seemed to appear in a dark corner. He was probably preparing to resurrect as a lich, so it's very likely. This whole thing was too dangerous. It's just as you say. Luck gazed out the window to clear his head. But regardless, this is a significant achievement. We must reward that barbarian handsomely, as long as it's within the territory's means. Before they knew it, the sky had begun to brighten. The first rays of dawn shone into the vast room when a frantic voice called out, my lord, the sound of someone stepping into slippers was heard. Look, dressed properly, said, I'm awake. Let them in. The palace door opened, and a maid ran in, reporting with a terrified expression. My lord, the inquisitor of the sun god, Lady Aquas, has arrived in the territory. Look's eyes widened in astonishment. What? In the drawing room, a girl with white hair was waiting. He rushed in, his own hair a mess. What is the meaning of this? Why is she here? That graceful and elegant girl was the inquisitor of the sun god. The room fell silent. Panicked, he quickly straightened his clothes. The two sat opposite each other. He was still flustered. It is a great honor to meet you. I am Lukva Khan, the lord of this territory. Thank you for your unexpected visit. She smiled and introduced herself gracefully. I am Aquas, inquisitor of the sun god, the one who receives the god's mandate to judge heretics. She was the youngest ever appointed, had beheaded 7 sorcerers who made pacts with demons, and single-handedly destroyed a terrifying demon-summoning ritual. Currently the most powerful inquisitor of the sun god on the continent, even the empire had to respect the church. She held power far exceeding a border lord. So why was someone like her here? Aquas began. This territory has been quite chaotic recently. Luck decided to be direct. There was a small problem in the dungeon, but it has been handled. A wave of relief washed over him. So she's not here because of the lich. He then probed, may I ask the reason for this visit? Aquas thought for a moment and replied, I came to discuss a divine oracle. Luck's eyes widened. Her next words changed everything. However, before that, I want to know what has been happening recently in this territory. Luck lowered his head, uncomfortable, but finally recounted the events. Upon hearing it, Aquas's expression changed. A barbarian. You mean this person defeated a lich? He nodded. Yes. And it may have been Keda's grandson Lessie. A horrifying image of him appeared in her mind. Aquaz was horrified and muttered, "What? That man was here." To be certain, the ancient vessel was placed right in front of her. The soul phylactery of Keda's made Aquaz's face turn pale. She clutched her sun pendant to suppress her anxiety. Everything fell silent. That barbarian is still in this territory, isn't he? Luke's answer was like a bucket of cold water. He is still here. Aquaz asked anxiously. That man defeated a lich. Is that even possible? Luke affirmed with conviction. Yes. He is quite strong. Even Sirkin was defeated by him. Aquaz knew a great change was coming, a new power was rising. What tribe does that barbarian belong to? Luke pursed his lips cautiously. He said he came from the White Wasteland. The image of Ketal appeared in Aquaz's mind. The White Wasteland. You mean he's from that desolate place? Why would he appear here? Could it be that he is the reason I was sent here? Hearing her strange whisper, Luke leaned in. What was that? Aquaz finished her thought. The divine oracle. That barbarian. I want to meet him. At the same time, in a quiet room, Ketal held a stone that radiated a dark purple light. He wondered, how do you use this thing? It looks like a magical artifact. Oh well, I'll ask a mage. Then he remembered something, sat up, and looked out the window. It's about time. Just then, someone called out. The Inquisitor of the Sun God wants to see you at the cathedral. When you meet her, please show her respect. Ketal smiled brightly. Don't worry, I know. Seeing his unusually calm demeanor, the man was puzzled but quickly let it go. It's good that you understand. Then let's go. Ketal smiled and nodded slightly. The image of the divine, passed down through the ages. In this world, gods truly exist. They bestow power directly, and can even descend to the mortal world. The places where their followers gather are called cathedrals. What makes the cathedrals in this world different? After walking for a while, the two of them stopped. The man signaled to Ketal that they had arrived. A small corner of a white building came into view. This is the Cathedral of the Sun God. From here, you're on your own. When you go inside, someone will guide you. Thank you. Ketal entered the church alone. Once inside, he was even more surprised. A magnificent statue of the goddess was on display. The pews were neatly arranged, the silence sacred. A priest approached to greet him. Welcome, Sir Ketal. Inquisitor Aquaz is waiting for you. Please follow me. Ketal was taken aback by the scene. All right. After a long moment, Aquaz finally spoke. It's a pleasure to meet you. I am Aquaz, an Inquisitor of the Sun God. Ketal, exuding confidence and personality, replied clearly, the pleasure is all mine. I am the barbarian, Ketal. So that's an Inquisitor. He thought. She's so young, but she's incredibly powerful. Aquaz was startled by his mischievous smile. He's smiling. What does that mean? Seeing her prolonged silence, he decided to speak. So, why did you want to see me? Aquaz lowered her gaze, finding it difficult to speak. It's about the recent dungeon incident. The lich you said you defeated. He has committed countless crimes across the continent. In the end, he became a lich, and only the strongest heroes have the skill and power to face him. Ketal recalled the being he had fought before. I've heard about that, he said, but the one I met was just a lone, struggling lich. He wasn't strong enough and ended up self-destructing. You may not believe me, but I'm only telling you what I saw. Finally, Aquaz got to her main point. Then, would you agree to let my god directly witness this conversation? He asked, confused. Witness. Aquaz briefly explained. That's right. If you lie in her presence, the god will react. Ketal began to understand. A form of interrogation using divine power. Oh. She was extremely wary of him. Even if he's not an ordinary barbarian, he's still a barbarian. There's no way he'll agree to this. With that thought, Aquaz gave him a choice. Of course, if you feel uncomfortable, you can refuse. Ketal's eyes lit up with excitement, and he agreed immediately. Why would I refuse such a request? This is the perfect opportunity for me to experience divine power. She asked, probing, are you sure? He nodded. Absolutely. Please begin right away. Even Aquaz was taken aback by his expression. What? He seemed eager. She asked again and again. Doesn't this worry you? What do you mean? She repeated, there is a god watching you. Ketal replied innocently, why should I be bothered? I have nothing to hide. I have never told a lie. No longer arguing, she closed her eyes and began. I see. Then let us begin. O deity whom I serve, you who observes from the highest realm, you who rules over the radiant sun, with your eyes, please expose all lies in this place. A strange light emanated. A brilliant beam of light shot down from the sky, through the roof of the church. The light surprised Ketal. What is this? I can feel it. A presence beyond imagination. It's magnificent, an existence that cannot be described in human language. His emotion upon facing it was bewilderment. A soft light enveloped the area where they sat. Fortunately, what Aquas had feared did not happen. Thank heavens, there's no reaction. Then let's begin. From now on, within this pillar of light, no lies are permitted. Hittel gladly went along with it. I understand. A conversation began under the observation of the sun god. He explained the process of clearing the dungeon just as he had before, and there was no negative reaction. In other words, everything he said was true. Kratos must have been severely weakened while preparing for his resurrection. If Kratos had been able to use magic, this barbarian wouldn't be here. He was lucky. After recounting the events, Kettle suddenly asked, "Have your suspicions been cleared?" She let out a sigh of relief. "Thank you. Please forgive my rudeness." "It's all right," Kettle said. "I enjoyed it too." "Then, one last thing," she continued. "May I ask you a personal question?" Of course, Kettle replied casually. "Are you truly from the White Snowfield?" The question made Kettle pause for a few seconds, slightly taken aback. But he then answered carelessly, "Yes." But she still didn't believe him and asked again, "You really came from there? The demon realm, for real?" The gray-haired man from the Empire's legends, she thought. Seeing her silence, Kettle suddenly asked, "Then let me ask you something. Why did you come to this domain?" "I have personal business here." Hittel continued, "Is that personal business to confirm whether or not I'm a fallen creature?" "I don't understand what you're talking about." With his chin in his hand, Kettle said, "I'm not sure, but for a god to personally observe me. That's not something that happens often. Just to find out if I'm lying seems a bit excessive." The woman thought helplessly, "I want to say that's not it, but under the eyes of the god, all falsehoods are forbidden." And so, her answer was, "That is correct." Hittel was surprised. "So I was your target from the beginning?" "Not exactly. There was a prophecy. When I came here, I thought you might be the one mentioned in the prophecy. But as you can see, the result is what it is. I'm sorry, I hid my true intentions from you." "It's all right," Kettle said. "I found it interesting myself. So let me ask another question. What does the prophecy say?" "Normally, I shouldn't reveal this to anyone other than those I trust," she thought. "But perhaps today will be an exception." With that thought, she spoke. "The prophecy says." She then told Kettle about the prophecy. Although the conversation was not made public, Kettle's expression was one of surprise and confusion. He quickly left after that. Now, she was alone in the cold space. Suddenly, footsteps approached. She quickly noticed and turned around. The person who appeared was the lord of the domain, Luke. Luke spoke softly. "My lady, it seems you've had some trouble." She nodded. "Yes. I met him, but now it has only confused my mind further." "Where did he come from, exactly?" Luke continued. "He is definitely a barbarian from the White Snowfield." Luke looked surprised. "Really?" "Yes. We have no information from inside the White Snowfield, but the fact that he came from there has been confirmed. I was hoping it wasn't true, but in the end, it's an undeniable fact." Luke thought, troubled. He continued, "If this gets out, it will throw the world into chaos. Many people want to explore the White Snowfield, especially the Emperor. If the Emperor acts personally." Imagining the chaos, while Luke was still worrying, the woman, as if understanding his concerns, spoke up. "You don't need to worry about that. We will handle Kratos ourselves, and we plan to conceal the barbarian's existence from the public." Luke breathed a sigh of relief. "That's a relief. Are all the barbarians in the White Snowfield like him?" "Probably not. If they were all like him, they would have already left the White Snowfield and conquered the world." "That's true. Even if not all of them are like him, there are many barbarians. Their strength is incredible, but they are also foolish. That is the natural limitation of barbarians. But what if those barbarians, with their superior physical strength, also possessed intelligence?" "Now that you mention it," Luke said, "I've heard that this generation's barbarian king is very different. It's said that he has both strength and wisdom." "The king of the barbarians. You mean him?" "I've met him once. He's certainly different from ordinary barbarians." "Is that so?" Luke continued. "It would be interesting if those two were to meet." "I don't think so. The relationship between barbarians and the devout is not good. That's why their growing power is not something we can ignore." Luke wondered. "By the way, what was it in the prophecy that made you meet him in person?" She replied, "I needed to confirm something." "Confirm? What do you mean?" "Whether he is a human or a being pretending to be an ordinary human." "What did the prophecy say?" "The prophecy says." And once again, she told Luke about the prophecy. Knowing this, Luke was utterly horrified. How could it be? A while later in the throne room, Luke sat on his throne and said casually, "Are you doing well?" Opposite him was Kettle. He crossed his arms and replied naturally, "Thanks to you, I'm living well in the domain." "So, why have you summoned me again?" "As the lord of this domain," Luke said, "I have something to tell you. First, I want to thank you for eliminating the lich in my domain." If that lich had regained its power, this place would have been destroyed. It was nothing, Kettle replied politely. So, what did you want to say? To be honest, I can't believe you defeated that lich, but everything will be kept secret. Defeating a lich is a great achievement, but this cannot reach the Emperor's ears. If he finds out, it will be quite troublesome. Therefore, I need to keep everything that happened here under wraps. I don't really care about that, Kettle said. I understand you, Luke continued. However, I have prepared a reward for saving this domain. With that, he presented something to Kettle. As soon as he saw it, Kettle's eyes lit up. This is your reward for saving my domain. A leather pouch. It's not an ordinary leather pouch. You should check it out for yourself. As soon as he opened it, Kettle's eyes shone. Luke's voice echoed in his ears. It's a holy artifact in the form of a pouch. You can store any item in it as long as it fits in the bag's space. The inside is about the size of this reception room. Kettle was incredibly surprised. A holy artifact is something created with magic. This is the first time I've seen one with my own eyes. Luke explained, even if the object is larger than the mouth of the pouch, you can still put as much as you want inside. Hearing this, Kettle took out his axe, pleased. If that's the case, I have to try it right away. It looked like it wouldn't fit, but as soon as he put it in, the axe miraculously disappeared. Kettle's eyes widened in amazement. To take things out of the pouch, Luke continued, you just need to reach inside and think about it. Hearing this, Kettle immediately tried it. The axe was quickly and miraculously pulled out. He exclaimed with joy, whoa, this is amazing. This is my gift to you for saving the domain, Luke said. I hope you like it. Kettle cheered with excitement. Like it? I love it. I'll definitely put it to good use. Luke smiled, thinking, I'm glad you like it. Well, that should settle this matter. Now the only remaining problem is the prophecy. What in the world is happening in this remote land? Monsters from the demon realm appearing. It seems something is happening in the world. Perhaps it's related to this prophecy. The prophecy said. He recalled what the Inquisitor of the Sun God had told him. Evil will descend. A great disaster will befall and spread throughout the world. The domain of Ekin was a network of countless villages, so the villages frequently interacted with each other. Then one day, contact with one of the villages was suddenly cut off. At first, no one thought much of it. But as days passed with no word, a neighboring village sent people to check. They never returned. Hearing this, the Lord sent soldiers, and they also did not return. Only then did the Lord realize that something had happened. A while later, Kettle was at the quest registration area. What's the quest for today? He asked. It's an urgent quest from the Lord, Rosa replied. What's the quest? Kettle asked. To investigate the village that has lost contact. A few days ago, one of the villages stopped communicating. You just need to go there and confirm the situation. It's just a simple dispatch mission, but the pay is quite high. Hearing this, Kettle was full of excitement. Oh, sounds good. I'll take it. The woman breathed a sigh of relief. Of course he would. After accepting the quest, Kettle went to the mission location. Was also there. She was leaning against a tree, lost in thought. Footsteps approached, and Kettle called out. She was taken aback by Kettle's new appearance, dashing, sleek, and much younger. She exclaimed in admiration, oh, Kettle, your outfit is so cool. I just had it made, Kettle replied. The one I wore in the snowfield was getting old. It was still in a state of shock. This design is so unique. I had it custom made myself, Kettle said. It's so special. By the way, did you also take this quest? Yes, Kettle replied. I couldn't refuse such an interesting quest. Just as I thought, you're not normal at all, thought. He then asked, but why are you alone? Aren't the other members of your team with you? Alexandro and Hassan aren't participating. He replied warily, they probably already know the details of the mission, so they must have refused. AC, Kettle said, as if it had just dawned on him. He then looked around, spotting a few figures nearby. There are fewer people than I expected, Kettle said. The mission is quite simple, and the reward is large. I thought it would be crowded. But there are less than 10 people here. Actually, this mission is quite dangerous, said. Kettle was surprised. Really? It sounds simple. It is very simple, she said, but the pay is too high. It's rumored that the guards who were sent never returned, so it seems this mission isn't really as simple as it seems. Even so, the number of participants is too small, Kettle replied. I thought there would be at least 10 people. Was surprised and stammered, well, the truth is, lately there's been another rumor. What rumor? It's rumored that the Heresy Inquisitor of the Sun God will be participating in this mission. Not many mercenaries are brave enough to go on a mission with the Heresy Inquisitor of the Sun God. She's not going to split my head open, is she? Hearing this, Kettle said nonchalantly, no, she won't. She's a kind and polite person. Was stunned. Wait, you know Inquisitor Aquas? Of course. She's my friend. Was completely shocked. a heresy inquisitor and a barbarian. Are friends. With that, Kettle turned and left, leaving her with a storm of confusion in her mind. Kettle walked up to Aquas and said, "It's a pleasure to see you again." She replied curtly, "I don't remember when I became friends with you." Kettle laughed to hide his awkwardness. "Aha, you heard that. Well, it's a good time to start being friends from now on." Then she stammered, "But the person with you is also a follower of another god, right? I mean." Kettle was surprised. "Oh, so you know her too?" Aquas was embarrassed. But wait. You said she is a holy woman who serves Kaosia." Hital was confused. "Is there a problem?" She continued, "No, it's just that, as far as I know, all the followers of Kaosia are currently in a period of rest. Only those in high-ranking positions can act now." Could it be? She let out a long, soft sigh. Hital and Aquas both turned to look at it, making her flustered. "No, it's nothing. I don't know all the sects well," Aquas said, "so I must be mistaken." Just then, someone approached and spoke up. "You're finally here." Following the direction of the voice, Kettle glanced over. His eyes met the captain and his cronies. Kettle cheered with excitement. "Commander, we meet again here," stood there silently, observing without a word. The captain of the guard stepped forward and announced, "I am here to welcome all the participants of this mission.